Chapter 3683. High up in the sky. The battle between the two supreme-level heaven-defying divine artifacts was not over yet. The blood sword had actually wanted to escape a long time ago. After all, even the human-shaped skeleton had been killed. Unfortunately, it was entangled by Li Feng's divine artifact and was unable to escape. A supreme-level heaven-defying divine artifact was still very valuable, because there was a chance that it could evolve into a dominator divine weapon. Qin Feiyang made a move and suppressed the blood sword. At the same time, in the distance, two figures flew over. One of them looked at the place where Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were from afar, and frowned. The battle fluctuations have already disappeared. I wonder who is fighting? The other person sneered. Who cares who he is as long as he is of help to us? Finished. The two of them retracted their auras and quietly sneaked over. When the two of them arrived outside the ancient city, they looked at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, who were standing in the air, and frowned. I didn't expect my luck to be so bad, to actually meet this little bastard. I'm sure I'm a little unlucky. From the conversation between the two of them, it was obvious that they were Qin Feiyang's opponents. Moreover, he hated Qin Feiyang quite a bit. What should we do? One of them asked. The other pondered for a moment, then said, although this little bastard is very annoying, it is undeniable that he is very strong. We might as well make use of him. Use him? I'm afraid that in the end, it will be us who will be used by him. In the end, who is using who, that will depend on whose methods are more powerful. The two of them discussed for a moment before taking action. Looking at Qin Feiyang again. After suppressing the blood-red sword and forcing it to swear a blood oath, Qin Feiyang prepared to leave with Li Feng. But at this moment, a beam of sword light appeared and smashed through the sky as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It then charged towards Qin Feiyang and the other man. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng raised their heads to look, and their pupils immediately shrank. This was the sword light of a dominator divine weapon, and the aura was quite familiar. White Dragon Sword. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with killing intent. He did not hesitate to take out the Death God's sword and slash forward. That was right. This sword light came from the White Dragon clan's sovereign divine weapon, the White Dragon Sword. With a loud bang, the sword light shattered on the spot. Whoosh! Just as the sword light shattered, the two people hiding in the dark soared into the air and flew away without looking back. You came here to attack me, and now you want to leave just like that? Qin Feiyang coldly snorted. Holding the sword of the Grim Reaper, he used the space-time step and chased after him like a bolt of lightning. Who are they? Li Feng also activated his supreme-grade support divine art and chased after him. The patriarchs of the White Dragon clan and the Black Dragon clan are truly enemies on a narrow road. Qin Feiyang sneered. He had seen these two when he ambushed them at the Death Glacier. You're courting death. Killing intent flashed in Li Feng's eyes. Don't underestimate them. After all of them have grasped the 6 profound meanings and sovereign weapons. Qin Feiyang reminded. He wasn't afraid because he had the ancient castle, the Grim Reaper's sword, the 3,000 incarnations, the Eye of Heaven, and the super forbidden technique, the 9 underworld's dragon flames. But Li Feng was different. Although Li Feng was also at the perfection sovereign realm, he was still far from a supreme expert. Suddenly, the white dragons turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, Qin Feiyang, how about we cooperate? Cooperation? Qin Feiyang was surprised. They actually proposed cooperation? However, was there a need for him to cooperate with the dragons? Besides, if they really wanted to cooperate, why would they sneak attack him? The black dragons also said, the Heaven Bell divine treasure is extremely dangerous. Even you might not be able to survive. So, if we cooperate, it will be beneficial to you and us. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, you guys stop first. Let's find a place to sit down and slowly discuss the cooperation. The white and black dragons looked at each other and asked, are you sure you won't attack us after we stop? I'm sure. Qin Feiyang nodded. When the two of them heard this, they really stopped. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. Holding the Death God's sword, he charged forward. Despicable person, you went back on your word. The two of them cursed and began to flee again. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. Despicable person? What a joke. The people who came to sneak attack him time and time again actually had the face to call him a despicable person. Li Feng sneered and said, "The dignified patriarch of the dragons actually only knows how to escape. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at if this spreads out?" And the two of them couldn't help but look at Li Feng, their brows slightly raised. Only now did they notice Li Feng's aura. Gathering ruthlessness, bloodthirstiness, and baleful aura in one body. He was a living devil who killed people like scything flax. Who was he? They had never seen him before. It seems that the dragons aren't much. Not to mention Big Brother Qin. Even I would be able to crush you all to death like ants. Li Feng's face was full of disdain. Arrogant. The black dragons were furious. Don't be impulsive, the plan is more important. The white dragons secretly comforted him. The black dragons coldly snorted and stared at Li Feng. What's your name? My name is Li Feng. I am your grandfather, Li Feng. Li Feng said proudly. Good. Very good. I will remember your name. The black dragons smiled coldly. So what if you remember? Do you still dare to touch me? Li Feng sneered. He had always hated the dragons. Although the dragons of the Sky Cloud realm and the dragons of the ancient realm had nothing to do with each other, it still couldn't eliminate the hatred in his heart. Preposterous. This is really preposterous. Nowadays, anyone dares to ride on the head of our dragon clan and behave atrociously. The black dragons were furious. Don't worry. Let's talk about it after we get that thing. The white dragon's eyes flickered. Unknowingly, the four of them chased over a valley. When passing over the valley, a cold light flashed in the white dragon's eyes. With a wave of his hand, a divine power blasted into the valley below, and the valley was razed to the ground on the spot. Brother Qin, you guys help cover the rear. When we find reinforcements, we will come back to pick you up. Immediately after, the white dragons looked at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng and shouted. A wave of space-time law emerged, and the next moment he activated momentary time and left with the black dragons like lightning. Cover the rear? Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were stunned. What did he mean? Moreover, the White Dragon clan leader had mastered the ultimate profundity of time arrays? Since he had such a method, why didn't he activate it before? Why wait until now? Boom. Just as Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were surprised, a terrifying aura suddenly emerged from the valley below. Immediately after, skeletons rushed out of the valley and stood in the void in front of Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were stunned. There were a total of 10 skeletons, and all of them were human-shaped skeletons. Moreover, just like the human-shaped skeletons they encountered in the ancient city, their bones were blood red. So many. At this moment, Qin Feiyang suddenly realized and frowned. They are using us. Use? Li Feng was surprised. That's right. They already knew that there were human-shaped skeletons here, so they deliberately lured us here. This is also the reason why they didn't activate momentary time before. Qin Feiyang nodded. The white dragons had momentary time. If they really wanted to escape, with his and Li Feng's speed, they wouldn't be able to catch up. Then why are they doing this? Li Feng was suspicious. I don't know. Maybe there are some treasures here. Qin Feiyang guessed. Treasures? Li Feng's spirit shook, but then he frowned and said, That's not right, they all have Dominator divine weapons. If there really is any treasure, they can just snatch it away. Why would they go through so much trouble to lure us here? Maybe. The real situation is not as simple as what we see now. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He looked at the 10 human-shaped skeletons and said, Everyone, they are not on our side, don't be deceived by them. Do you think we are that easy to fool? I told you to cover the retreat, and you are not on the same side. The 10 human-shaped skeletons let out a shrill laugh and charged towards Qin Feiyang and Li Feng one after another. It seems that I am thinking too much. You guys don't have the ability to judge right from wrong. If that's the case, then destroy them all. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. The death god's sword tore through the sky and slashed out. Dominator divine weapon? The 10 human-shaped skeletons were shocked and decisively retreated. You want to escape in the face of a Dominator divine weapon? Li Feng's face was full of disdain. At the same time, his eyes were filled with desire. The power of law contained in the souls of the 10 human-shaped skeletons was definitely beyond imagination. However, Qin Feiyang did not chase after the 10 human-shaped skeletons. Seeing the 10 human-shaped skeletons retreat, he immediately swept up Li Feng and continued to chase in the direction of the white dragons. Why didn't you kill them? Li Feng was suspicious. I feel that this matter is not so simple. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The white and black dragons both had Dominator divine weapons, but they chose to use them to deal with the human-shaped skeletons. No matter how one looked at it, it did not seem normal. So it was best not to fight. The best plan was to retreat. Clang. But at the next moment, accompanied by 2 loud sounds, 2 sword rays shattered the ground and rushed out. What? Li Feng's expression changed. Qin Feiyang's expression also changed. Dominator divine weapons. And 2 Dominator divine weapons. There was indeed a problem. As soon as the 2 sword rays appeared, they went straight for Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. The surrounding void and earth began to collapse and sink. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. He grabbed the sword of Thanatos and slashed at the 2 sword rays. Boom. The 2 sword rays shattered. Not bad, not bad. Someone actually dares to come and offend this lord's divine might. Accompanied by 2 cold laughter, 2 battle swords appeared one after another, carrying the power to destroy the world, in front and behind Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. One was golden, as if it was made of gold. The other was silver-white, as if it was cast with silver foil, dazzling divine light. It's really 2 Dominator divine weapons. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other. But at the next moment, their eyes shone with green light. The Sky Bell divine treasure indeed had a Dominator divine weapon. Moreover, as the Sky Bell divine treasure's Dominator divine weapon, it must be an ownerless item. Since it was an ownerless item, didn't that mean there was a chance to subdue it? No. The white and black dragons already had Dominator divine weapons. If it was really possible to subdue it, why would the 2 dragons give such a good opportunity to them? Without a doubt, these 2 were definitely difficult to chew. Chapter 3684. The Golden Battle Sword sneered. Last night, your 2 accomplices overestimated themselves and came over to subdue us, asking us to serve them. However, in the end, they were beaten away by us, but I didn't expect them to still not give up. A mere 2 humans and 2 divine dragons actually want our sovereign divine weapon to submit to them. They really overestimate themselves. The silver battle sword also laughed in disdain. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other. It was indeed a trap. They looked in the direction where the black dragons and the white dragons had escaped. The 2 of them had long since disappeared. However, they dared to conclude. The 2 of them definitely did not leave. They must be hiding somewhere nearby, waiting for them to fight with the 2 sovereign divine weapons. In the end, both sides would be injured, and then they would come out and reap the benefits. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze, looked at the 2 sovereign divine weapons, and said, "You 2, please believe me, we are really not in cahoots with them." Boom. However, what responded to Qin Feiyang were 2 sharp sword lights. Qin Feiyang waved the death god's sword, shattering the 2 sword lights, and said angrily, "Don't be used by them." Use. Haha. Do you really think this sovereign is stupid? We'll talk about it later. Even if you are not accomplices, as long as you are an outsider, you should be killed. The golden battle sword sneered, and immediately recovered, rushing towards Qin Feiyang. Retreat. Be careful of the sneak attacks of the black and white dragons. Qin Feiyang secretly warned Li Feng, and then resolutely rushed towards the golden battle sword, because there was no way to avoid it. Moreover, if the sovereign divine weapon was determined to kill you, then it would really be difficult for you to escape. However, he didn't really care about the 2 sovereign divine weapons. He was most worried about the Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch. The 2 of them were lurking in the dark, like 2 ticking time bombs, making people unable to feel at ease. Li Feng retreated like lightning. At this moment, of course he couldn't stay. After all, this was a battle between Dominator weapons. If he stayed, he would only become a burden to Qin Feiyang. However, at the same time, the 10 human-shaped skeletons laughed cruelly and charged towards Li Feng. Clang! The sword of the Grim Reaper and the golden battle sword collided, and a destructive aura swept out in all directions like a tide. The silver sword followed suit. Qin Feiyang and the Grim Reaper were both blasted away by the combined attacks of the two sovereign weapons. Haha! You have a Dominator weapon at such a young age. I believe your status in the outside world must be extraordinary. However, this is the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure. Anyone who comes here will find it hard to escape death. The two sovereign divine weapons laughed sinisterly as their divine auras flooded the area. Really? If you guys are really that powerful, then why did so many people leave the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury alive the last time it opened? Qin Feiyang sneered. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit were the ones who returned alive. With a loud clang, the ancient castle appeared and joined the Death God's sword in attacking the two sovereign weapons. What? There is actually another sovereign divine weapon. The two sovereign divine weapons were shocked. Qin Feiyang also decisively left the battle and rushed towards Li Feng. Because if the 10 human-shaped skeletons all mastered a supreme profound, then Li Feng would not be able to defeat them. In the distance, Li Feng and the 10 human-shaped skeletons had already started fighting. At first, the 10 human-shaped skeletons did not display any extraordinary strength, which made Li Feng think that their strength was very ordinary. However, when he thought that victory was in his hands, the 10 human-shaped skeletons all used a supreme profound. Although none of them were supreme profundities, the 10 ordinary supreme profundities were more than enough to crush him to pieces. After all, he had only grasped the supreme profundity of the law of slaughter. Seeing the 10 supreme profound coming at him and his life in danger, Qin Feiyang landed in front of Li Feng like a divine weapon descending from the heavens. He activated the supreme profound of the destruction law and crushed over. Boom! The 10 supreme profound disintegrated one after another. The supreme law is indeed different. Li Feng looked at this scene and couldn't help but be fascinated. The 10 human-shaped skeletons, on the other hand, showed signs of fear. Qin Feiyang was about to kill, but at the next moment, a fatal crisis appeared. He thought that it was the Black Dragon Clan leader and the White Dragon Clan leader who were secretly attacking, but when he turned around, he realized that it was another human-shaped skeleton. He saw a human-shaped skeleton coming from behind like a ghost. And the strange thing was, the bones of this human-shaped skeleton were actually golden, and the soul of the dead in its eye sockets was also like a golden flame. Qin Dage, be careful! Li Feng shouted. He was originally behind Qin Feiyang. When he saw the golden human-shaped skeleton coming, he turned around without hesitation and activated the slaughter law to attack the golden human-shaped skeleton. And the golden human-shaped skeleton sneered, and a wave of death aura rolled out. Following closely, a dark red waning moon rose and blasted toward the slaughter law. With a loud bang, Li Feng's supreme profound of the slaughter law was immediately shattered in the sky without any resistance. The supreme profound of the death law. Li Feng's eyes trembled. It actually grasped the supreme profound of the supreme law. Were these really just skeletons? The waning moon shattered the sky and charged toward Li Feng. Li Feng's heart immediately surged with a sense of impending death. Boom! But at this moment, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the destruction god in the sky slapped at the waning moon. Accompanied by an earth-shattering bang, the two supreme profound collapsed in the sky at the same time. Are you okay? Qin Feiyang landed beside Li Feng and asked. I'm fine. Li Feng shook his head. It was really fortunate that he met Qin Dage when he came here. Otherwise, with his strength, he would only be courting death in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Originally, he thought that when he broke through to the Peak Sovereign Realm, he should have no problem protecting himself. But in fact, in order to protect himself in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he had to grasp at least one supreme profound of the supreme law. A skeleton that grasped a supreme profound of the supreme profound. In just a few days, he encountered two sovereign divine weapons. This place was really beyond his imagination. The golden human-shaped skeleton looked at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, then looked at the 10 blood-red human-shaped skeletons, and said with a sinister smile, absorb their blood, and one of you should be able to evolve. Kill them. Boom. Hearing this, the 10 blood-red skeletons seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, as they activated their Supreme Profound of the Supreme Profound. The golden skeleton also activated the Supreme Profound of the Death Law once again. 11 Supreme Profound of the Supreme Profound charged toward Qin Feiyang and Li Feng from all directions. Killing me is no problem, but killing Qin Dage? What a fool's dream. Li Feng sneered. Even the supreme experts of the various forbidden zones could only flee in front of Qin Dage, let alone a few skeletons. Your courage is commendable. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The 2 Supreme Profound of the Karma Law and the Destruction Law appeared out of nowhere. The Destruction Law's Supreme Profound of the Destruction Law attacked the golden skeleton. The 10 golden lotuses formed by the Karma Law's Supreme Profound of the Karma Law attacked the 10 blood-red skeletons respectively. Boom. Accompanied by a series of loud sounds, the Supreme Profound of the Supreme Profound shattered in the sky, and the destructive aura swept in all directions. What? There's also the Karma Law's Supreme Profound of the Karma Law. The golden skeleton's expression changed, and it hurriedly abandoned the 10 blood-red skeletons and turned to flee. After witnessing Qin Feiyang's true strength, the 10 blood-red skeletons also wanted to flee, but their strength didn't allow it. The 10 golden lotuses shattered their Supreme Profound of the Supreme Profound and directly blasted toward their bodies. Ah! Following a series of miserable screams, the 10 blood-red skeletons were shattered on the spot. Seeing this, Li Feng immediately rushed up excitedly. The bloody hand between his eyebrows appeared and quickly swallowed their souls. Qin Feiyang ignored it. He used the space-time step and chased after the golden skeleton. Qin Dage, these skeletons don't seem to have a divine art. Li Feng reminded. Without a divine art, you still want to escape? Qin Feiyang stared at the golden skeleton, his eyes flashing with intense killing intent. If it had a supplementary divine art or Supreme Profound of the Time Law, it would be difficult for him to catch up to it even if he used all his strength. But without these methods, it was naturally nothing to worry about. The space-time step was a supreme-grade supplementary divine art, and after being improved by the little rabbit, it had already surpassed all supplementary divine arts. It could be said that the space-time step was the most powerful supplementary divine art in the world now. In just a few blinks of an eye, Qin Feiyang caught up to the golden skeleton and stood in front of it. The golden skeleton's body was overflowing with hostility as it punched toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang didn't retreat and also punched out. Boom. The 2 fists collided with a loud bang. The strength of the 2 was completely on par. Strong indeed. Qin Feiyang muttered. The Death Law and Destruction Law were activated at the same time. Accompanied by an earth-shattering bang, the golden skeleton was shattered on the spot. Li Feng also ran over and swallowed the soul of the golden skeleton. Why aren't you attacking? What a good opportunity this is. Not far away, on a mountaintop, the Black Dragon Clan leader hid behind a huge rock and asked the White Dragon Clan leader next to him through telepathy. The ancient castle and the sword of Thanatos were both entangled by the 2 sovereign divine weapons. Now was undoubtedly the best time to attack Qin Feiyang. Opportunity? The white dragons were slightly stunned and mocked. I think the older you get, the more muddle-headed you become. What do you mean? The black dragon's eyes flashed coldly. See for yourself. The white dragon snorted and looked at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng with flickering eyes. The black dragon patriarch frowned and lowered his head in silence. You don't understand? Sigh. Think about it carefully. If we attack now, won't it be the same as admitting to the 2 sovereign divine weapons that were not with Qin Feiyang? Then they might join forces to deal with us. Besides, don't forget that apart from the sword of Thanatos and the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang still has 4 sovereign divine weapons. The white dragons heaved a sigh. Because the people from the Forbidden Lands had entered the Sky Bell divine treasure first, no one saw Qin Feiyang give the horsetail whisk, the blood dragon blade and the sovereign divine weapons of the demon palace, and the heavenly palace to the mad scientist, the white-eyed wolf and Yun Xiang. They thought that Qin Feiyang still had them. Chapter 3685. The chief of the Black Dragons raised his eyebrows slightly and said, So you're saying that we're helping them this time? That won't happen. 6 sovereign divine weapons. It won't be difficult to destroy these 2 swords, but it won't be that easy to subdue them. I believe that Qin Feiyang won't be willing to destroy these 2 sovereign divine weapons. The White Dragon clan leader transmitted his voice and acted as if everything was going according to his plan. That makes sense. The chief of the Black Dragons nodded. It would take a lot of effort to subdue a sovereign divine weapon. They couldn't fight it head-on, so they could only wait for an opportunity, while Qin Feiyang was subduing the 2 sovereign divine weapons. Clang! Boom! The battle between the 4 sovereign divine weapons had reached its climax. The shockwaves from the battle were so terrifying that Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, and the chief of the Black and White Dragons retreated further and further away. Strange. Why haven't we seen him take out the other sovereign divine weapons? The chief of the White Dragons frowned. Could it be that these sovereign divine weapons weren't with Qin Feiyang at all? Thinking of this, the chief of the White Dragons raised his eyebrows. He seemed to have missed something important. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit had entered the Sky Bell Divine Treasure before, so they were very clear about the situation there. Perhaps, before entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit had already told Qin Feiyang that the Sky Bell Divine Treasure was randomly teleported. Out of concern for the Golden-Winged Wolf King and the Mad Scientist, the other 4 sovereign divine weapons were given to them? That's right. That must be it. Given Qin Feiyang's personality, even if he wanted to probe the 2 sovereign divine weapons first, it was impossible for him to probe for so long. The only explanation was that he only had 2 sovereign divine weapons on him now. Thinking of this, the chief of the White Dragon's eyes flashed with killing intent. Get ready to attack and kill them. Huh. The chief of the Black Dragons was shocked. It was my fault before. I neglected some important points. The other 4 Dominator weapons should be with the Mad Scientist and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. The White Dragons transmitted their voices. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and do it. Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the Black Dragons. But the White Dragons blocked the Black Dragons. What? The Black Dragons looked at him with dissatisfaction. You're the one who said you were going to attack, and now you're the one who's going to stop me? What was he trying to do? I've thought about it. That's not the right thing to do. If we attack now, even if the 2 swords know that we are not on the same side, they will definitely be angry. After all, we are using Qin Feiyang to deal with them, and we are also using them to deal with Qin Feiyang. Taking a step back, even if they don't join forces with Qin Feiyang to deal with us, they will still be wary of us. No matter what, as long as we interfere, the situation will become even more complicated. The White Dragons shook his head. Then what are you trying to do? The Black Dragons raised his eyebrows. To be safe, let's stick to the original plan. Let them both be injured first, and then we'll go out and reap the benefits. The White Dragons' eyes flashed. Okay. The Black Dragons nodded. The battle continued. For existences at the level of sovereign divine weapons, if there was no absolute suppression in numbers, it would be very difficult to determine the victor. In other words, in a situation where the numbers were equal, this was a protracted battle. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, but the 4 sovereign divine weapons had yet to determine a victor. Not only Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, but the White and Black Dragons were also starting to feel anxious. This was because the fluctuations caused by the battle between the sovereign divine weapons were too great. If there were companions nearby and they were attracted by the battle, things would be very bad. No. We have to get the White and Black Dragons to participate as well. Li Feng transmitted his voice. What's the point of getting them involved? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Rather than letting them hide in the dark and reap the benefits, it's better to take the initiative to find them. Maybe at that time, we can temporarily form a cooperation and deal a heavy blow to those 2 swords, Li Feng secretly said. Rather than looking for them to cooperate, it's better to cooperate with those 2 swords. Qin Feiyang secretly laughed. Li Feng was surprised. Cooperating with the White and Black Dragons is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. We have to be wary of them scheming against us at all times. Moreover, even if we're stronger in the end, we'll only get those 2 swords. But if those 2 swords cooperate with us, not only will we have a chance to get rid of the white and black dragons, these 2 powerful enemies in the future, but we'll also have a chance to subdue the white and black dragons. So tell me, which one is more cost-effective? Qin Feiyang secretly said. Li Feng pondered for a while and frowned. Although what you said makes sense, those 2 swords don't trust us at all. I know. So I need to talk to them face to face. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and rushed toward the battlefield with Li Feng. What are they going to do? Seeing Qin Feiyang's actions, the Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch were bewildered. Without the protection of the sovereign divine weapons, they still dared to go to the battlefield. Wasn't this courting death? Could it be that their judgment was wrong? The other 4 sovereign divine weapons were actually with Qin Feiyang? But that couldn't be right. If the 4 sovereign divine weapons were really with Qin Feiyang, there was no need for him to go to the battlefield personally. He could just let the 4 sovereign divine weapons go to help him. Castle, Sword of Thanatos, come and help me first. Qin Feiyang shouted. At the center of the battlefield. Hearing Qin Feiyang's shout, Castle of Thanatos and the Sword of Thanatos immediately shook off the 2 swords and rushed to the sky above Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. When the divine might descended, the fluctuations of the battle in the surroundings were immediately isolated. Seeing this, the White Dragon Clan leader and the Black Dragon Clan leader looked at each other and smiled bitterly. It was really a false alarm. Obviously, just as they had guessed, the other 4 sovereign divine weapons were not with them. Because if the other 4 sovereign divine weapons were with them, Qin Feiyang wouldn't have sent Castle of Thanatos and the Sword of Thanatos to protect him. Clang! 2 battle swords were coming at him aggressively. Castle of Thanatos and the Sword of Thanatos now had to fight against the 2 swords while protecting Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. It could be said that the pressure was doubled. The 2 of you listen to me. We are not with those 2 from before. We were careless and were used by them. And now you are being used by them. Qin Feiyang transmitted. Used? The 2 swords were doubtful. That's right. They are dragons and I am a human. How can I be in cahoots with them? I know that what I said now is not convincing to you at all. After all, you don't know the grudge between me and them. But I really didn't lie to you. Their conspiracy is actually very simple. While we are fighting, they will come out and reap the benefits. If you don't believe me and insist on fighting with us, it will be too late for regrets. Qin Feiyang secretly transmitted his voice. Are you sure? The Golden Sword asked. I swear. If you really don't believe me, you might as well spend some time to put on a show with me. In the end, if what I said is true, you will cooperate with me and help me kill them. Qin Feiyang said. After killing them, you will come and kill us? Kill us one by one. This way, you will be the biggest winner. Wishful thinking. The Silver Sword sneered. If you cooperate with me and help me get rid of them, I promise to leave immediately. As for killing you as a sovereign weapon, you shouldn't be so unconfident, right? Qin Feiyang retorted. Haha. What a good provocation. Congratulations to you for successfully provoking us. Fine, we will do as you wish and cooperate with you to finish this show. But this lord wants to tell you in advance. If in the end, the truth is not as you said, then don't blame us for being ruthless and joining hands with the dragons to get rid of you. The 2 swords said. It's a deal. Qin Feiyang was secretly happy. Sure enough, as long as there is a chance to communicate, anything is possible. Chapter 3686. The white dragons and black dragons were still thinking about their dreams coming true, but little did they know that a cooperation against them had already been achieved. After all, getting rid of Qin Feiyang would be a matter of fame and fortune for them. First of all, Qin Feiyang's luck was too good. Not only did he have a strong foundation, but he also had the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit as his backers. The threat to them was too great. Secondly, the Black Tortoise world that Qin Feiyang controlled was an independent world. Who didn't desire an independent world? Before entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the Dragon King had repeatedly told them that if they had the chance to get rid of Qin Feiyang, they could give up the castle and the Black Tortoise world, but they had to get their hands on it. Because for any race, the Black Tortoise world was a fatal temptation, and it was a sanctuary bestowed by the heavens. As long as the Black Tortoise world existed, it would ensure that they would never decline for generations to come. Clang. Boom. The battle between the 4 sovereign divine weapons became more and more intense. The previous 3 days and 3 nights of protracted battle seemed to be just a warm-up before the battle. The terrifying divine power destroyed everything around them. Another half a day passed. The aura of the 4 sovereign divine weapons was slowly weakening. This was to create the illusion that both the White Dragon Clan leader and the Black Dragon Clan leader were severely injured and were gradually weakening. Because the range of the battle between the 4 sovereign divine weapons was too wide, they couldn't watch the battle from a close distance. From where they were now, they couldn't see the real situation of Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, and the 4 sovereign divine weapons. Of course, if they activated the White Dragon Sword and Black Dragon Mirror, it would naturally be a different story. With the protection of the White Dragon Sword and Black Dragon Mirror, not to mention watching the battle from a close distance, even if they were standing in the middle of the battlefield, it would be fine. However, they were worried that their whereabouts would be exposed, so they didn't dare to use the White Dragon Sword and Black Dragon Mirror. This caused them to be unable to see with their own eyes no matter how Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, and the 4 sovereign divine weapons acted. They could only judge based on the strength of the battle. However, they also didn't expect that this was a fake show against them. After all, the battle had been going on for several days. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the battle, they were all trying to kill each other. This is the last collision. Listen to my plan. Qin Feiyang glanced in the direction of the White Dragon Patriarch and the White Dragon Patriarch. His eyes flashed as he secretly warned everyone. Very soon, the 4 sovereigns' divine weapons unleashed a world-destroying aura. Looks like they're already preparing for the final battle. Just you wait. Our plan will definitely succeed. The White Dragons clenched their fists as they scanned the chaotic battlefield. Their eyes filled with excitement and anticipation. It was the same for the Black Dragons. After waiting for so many days, this moment had finally arrived. Rumble. Not long after, 2 earth-shaking collisions rang out from the center of the battlefield. Following closely, whether it was Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, or the 4 sovereigns' divine weapons, all of their auras rapidly weakened. Haha. Did you see that? Both sides suffered. As the saying goes, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. We the 2 orioles are the biggest winners. The White Dragons laughed out loud. The White Dragon Sword no longer concealed itself as it flew out from his body. The Black Dragon Mirror also appeared from the Black Dragons. The 2 sovereigns' divine weapons released their divine might, protecting the 2 of them as they rushed to the center of the battlefield like lightning. When they entered the center of the battlefield, they saw Qin Feiyang and Li Feng lying on a piece of broken ground. They were covered in wounds, bleeding profusely, and their qi was also destroyed. However, the castle, the Death God's sword, the golden battle sword, and the silver battle sword were nowhere to be seen. What's going on? The 2 frowned, but very quickly, they locked onto the aura of the 4 sovereigns' divine weapons. The aura of the castle and the Death God's sword came from the ground not far to the east. They were obviously submerged in the soil. The aura of the golden battle sword and the silver battle sword came from a broken mountain not far to the west. They were also buried in the soil and gravel, and the aura of the 4 sovereigns' divine weapons were already extremely weak. Without looking, they knew that they must have suffered fatal injuries. You didn't leave? Looking at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng again. Seeing the 2 of them appear, their expressions changed drastically. Don't you understand? This is a trap that we deliberately arranged for you. The White Dragons laughed. A trap? Qin Feiyang frowned. That's right. I have to admit that the 2 of us are really lucky. The Sky Bell Divine Treasure is obviously a random teleportation mechanism, but in the end, the 2 of us were teleported together. Don't you think this is a blessing from the heavens? And on the second day, we encountered 2 sovereigns' divine weapons here. The White Dragons became more and more proud. Although we are very lucky, we can't do anything in the face of 2 sovereigns' divine weapons. After all, We only have 2 sovereigns' divine weapons. I don't need to tell you the strength of the sovereigns' divine weapons. You should know very well that with the same number of sovereigns' divine weapons, there is no way to defeat them. So, after a short fight with them, we tactfully left and prepared to find other companions to subdue them. But we didn't expect to meet the 2 of you here. So we came up with a plan. We lured you here and let you fight with them first. When both of you are injured, we will come out and reap the benefits. The Black Dragon Patriarch chuckled. The plan was perfect. It was successful. Now, it was time for them to reel in the net. Actually, your appearance is a huge accident. Of course, it is also a huge surprise. Our original goal was to subdue the 2 sovereigns' divine weapons here, but now we can also get rid of you this disaster. It can be said that we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone. No. It should be said that we are killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Because we can also obtain your Black Tortoise World and the first volume of the alchemy scripture. The white dragons laughed unscrupulously, becoming more and more arrogant. You know that the first volume of the alchemy scripture is in my hands? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Of course. Revered dragon Long Shaoqing has been with us dragons for many years. It would be hard for us not to know. The black dragon sneered. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. Suddenly, a trace of a smile appeared on his face. He looked at the 2 of them and said, "So, what do you plan to do with us now?" Do you still need to ask this question? Don't tell me you are so stupid to think that we will still give you a chance and let you live now. The 2 of them sneered. Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Who was the stupid one? They were already surrounded, but they were still so arrogant. Then he said, "Both of you, have you heard it? It's time for you to perform." Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, the white and black dragons were stunned. Perform? What did he mean? Clang. Clang. In the next moment, accompanied by 4 loud noises, 4 terrifying auras erupted. Then, the ancient castle, the sword of the Grim Reaper, the golden battle sword, and the silver battle sword rushed out from the ground like lightning and surrounded the white and black dragons. What? The 2 of them looked at the 4 sovereign divine weapons in disbelief. The reason for that was because although the 4 great dominator divine armaments had many wounds on their bodies, they were not affected in any way. That weakened state from before had also completely disappeared. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Li Feng got up and laughed. What's going on? The 2 of them glared at Qin Feiyang. Actually, I have already seen through your plan. I also know that you must be hiding in the dark and waiting for both of us to be injured before coming out to reel in the net. So, I beat them at their own game and secretly persuaded them to cooperate with us to put on this show. However, to make it more realistic, except for the shattered Sea of Qi, Li Feng's and my injuries are real. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and took out 2 divine life pills. He and Li Feng consumed them separately. In other words, their Sea of Qi was not shattered, but the injuries on their bodies were real. The white dragon's eyes darkened when they heard this. Do you know what your biggest mistake is? It's not because of your stupidity. It's because you were too proud and confident. You were so confident that you didn't find them and check on their injuries. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He didn't expect that the 2 of them would be so gullible. They casually covered them with soil and stones and changed their aura. They really thought that the 4 sovereign divine weapons were seriously injured. Bastard! The 2 of them roared. They were ashamed and angry. They thought that everything was under control. Little did they know that they had fallen into the other party's trap. How dare you use us? You really don't know what's good for you. With a furious roar, the golden battle sword charged toward the White Dragon Clan leader, and the White Dragon Clan leader with an earth-shattering sharpness. Go! Bai Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror saw that the situation was not good. They worked together to blast the golden battle sword away, and sent the 2 of them out of the encirclement. Go. Humph. It's our turn to reel in the net. Castle, help them stall Bai Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror. Sword of the Grim Reaper, follow me to kill them. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Castle immediately joined the battlefield and charged toward Bai Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror. The silver battle sword and the golden battle sword that had been blasted away also charged toward the two sovereign divine weapons. In fact, there was no need for the sword of the Grim Reaper to help the white and black dragons. But the white dragons had mastered the supreme profound of the time laws. With his and Li Feng's speed, they couldn't catch up, so they needed the sword of the Grim Reaper to help intercept them. Sure enough, after being sent out of the encirclement by Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror, the white dragons immediately activated momentary time and fled crazily with the black dragons. If they stayed now, they would drag Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror down. On the contrary, as long as they could escape first, Longjian and Black Dragon Mirror would have no worries. At that time, they might be able to find an opportunity to escape. Clang. However, momentary time was not invincible in front of the sovereign divine weapon. The sovereign divine weapon was not only strong, but also faster than all living creatures. Unless you mastered the ultimate profound, you were not qualified to fight against them. Chapter 3687. Clang. After leaving the ancient castle and the battlefield of the five sovereign weapons, the sword of the Grim Reaper decisively took action, bringing Qin Feiyang and Li Feng to block in front of the two. The terrifying sword Qi was like a tide, covering the sky and covering the earth as it rushed towards the two people. Divine Dragon Domain. The two of them were scared out of their wits as they activated their super forbidden technique. The power of the Divine Dragon emerged and condensed into a barrier that was dozens of feet wide. It flickered with sacred light, and there were dragon shadows roaring on it. This is the super forbidden technique of the dragons? Qin Feiyang sized up the barrier. From the aura, it was indeed stronger than the Golden Dragon Domain and the Fire Dragon Domain that he had seen before. However, even he had the ability to break a super forbidden technique, let alone a sovereign weapon. Everything was just a futile struggle. Boom. The sword Qi enveloped. The so-called super forbidden technique was like a withered tree that couldn't withstand a single blow and was directly shattered. At the critical moment of life and death, the two of them returned to their original form. A white dragon and a black dragon appeared out of nowhere. Their bodies were covered with millstone-sized scales that were as hard as steel. But under the sword Qi of the sword of the Grim Reaper, they still couldn't resist. Dragon scales continued to shatter, and dragon blood dyed the sky red. Clang. Two supreme-level heaven-defying armors appeared on their bodies, but they still couldn't resist and were instantly shattered. This was the strength of a sovereign weapon, crushing everything. In the end, accompanied by a scream, the two of them were cut down by the sword Qi, breaking into dozens of pieces. Blood stained the surroundings, and their Qi was also shattered. They lay in a pool of blood on the verge of death, their eyes filled with despair. Powerful. Li Feng's heart trembled. Even a super strong warrior didn't have the slightest strength to resist. A sovereign weapon was indeed an invincible existence. I'll leave the rest to you. After the sword of the Grim Reaper heavily injured the two dragons, it left behind a sentence and prepared to go support the ancient castle. But at this moment, a golden figure came from afar like lightning. Big brother? Save us. The Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch looked up and were overjoyed. Golden dragons. In the meantime, Qin Feiyang raised an eyebrow as he turned toward the sword of the Grim Reaper. He has the golden dragon spear, so it looks like you won't be able to reinforce the castle. Who would have thought that the golden dragons would appear out of nowhere? Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. He bumped into the three clan leaders of the dragons. That's not a big deal. Leave the golden dragon spear to me, and I'll leave the golden dragons to you. Are you confident? The Grim Reaper's sword said. Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded. All right. Let's end this quickly. After saying that, the sword of the Thanatos immediately charged towards the golden dragons. At the same time, hearing the Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch's cries for help, the Golden Dragon Patriarch was slightly stunned. Previously, he had sensed the battle aura of the White Dragon Sword and the Black Dragon Mirror, which was why he had come here to investigate. However, he did not expect that. To think that he would see such a scene. As the two clan leaders of the dragons, they had actually fallen to such a state? When he looked at Qin Feiyang and the sword of the Thanatos, his face immediately darkened. So it was this little bastard. Golden Dragon Spear. With a loud roar from the gold dragons, the golden dragon spear appeared with a loud clanging sound. It carried a dazzling divine light as it charged towards the sword of the Thanatos. You probably don't want our battle to affect them, right? The sword of the Thanatos sneered and immediately rushed into the distance. The golden dragon spear hesitated for a moment, before chasing after the sword of the Thanatos. Indeed, if they were to fight here, not only Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, but even the gold dragons would be affected by the battle. At that time, before they could determine the winner, their masters had already lost their lives. Qin Feiyang, you're really like a ghost that won't go away. The Golden Dragon Patriarch arrived above the Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch at lightning speed and glared at Qin Feiyang. I should be the one saying that. Qin Feiyang said. The Black Dragons shouted, Big brother, don't worry about me, quickly save us. The Gold Dragons were the eldest. Therefore, the other 9 clan leaders all called him Big Brother. Of course, this was also because they had to ask the Gold Dragons for help. Otherwise, with the selfishness of the dragons, who would care about each other? Save? Li Feng looked at the two of them with disdain and said, How do you want him to save you? Even if he gives you 10 pills with dragon-shaped core energy, it will take time to recover. By the time you've recovered your energy C and injuries, the battle will have already ended. Haha. A brat still wet behind the ears dares to openly mock us? The two of them laughed. The gold dragons also pursed their lips with a hint of mockery. Boom. The next moment, a majestic life force emerged, drowning the black and white dragons like a tide. This is the law of life. Li Feng was dumbfounded. He didn't expect this gold dragons to have mastered the law of life. Moreover, with his status and strength among the dragons, he didn't need to judge to know that the law of life had definitely reached the level of the supreme profound meaning. He had personally experienced the healing ability of the law of life. Compared to pills, who knew how many times stronger, it could be said that, in this world, no pill could compare to the law of life. We can't let the white dragons recover from their injuries. Otherwise, if we activate the momentary time, none of us will be able to hold them back. Activate your supreme profound meaning of the law of slaughter. Qin Feiyang's gaze also darkened slightly. Without holding back, the 3,000 incarnations were activated. The most important thing was, previously, without the Golden Dragon Spear, the battle between the ancient castle and the Dominator divine weapons was a 2 versus 4 situation. In such a situation, as long as the golden and silver battle swords fought with their lives on the line, coupled with the ancient castle and the death god's sword, there was a high chance that they could keep the white dragon sword and the black dragon mirror. But now, with the golden dragon spear attacking, it was a 3 versus 4 situation. With just a difference of 1 Dominator divine weapon, there was no way to achieve absolute suppression. Naturally, it was difficult to keep the white dragon sword and the black dragon mirror. So, no matter what, they had to keep these 3 people. As long as they kept these 3 people, it was equivalent to keeping the 3 Dominator divine weapons, the black dragon mirror. As long as they kept these 3 Dominator divine weapons, in a 4 versus 3 situation, they would win sooner or later. Needless to say, the ancient castle and the death god's sword would definitely go all out. So now, it was up to the golden and silver battle swords to see if they were willing to go all out. If at this time, the golden and silver battle swords suddenly withdrew from the battlefield, then the situation would be reversed, and they would be in a passive position. And at the moment, there were also many uncertain factors. For example, were there other dragons nearby? Or the Foam people? Or the Kirin clan? No matter which race they were from, as long as they appeared here, it was very bad news for him. Of course, it could also be his people. For example, the white-eyed wolf, the madman, or the various beast emperors of the heavenly cloud sea, and the black-clothed middle-aged man in the land of the buried gods. Once these people appeared, it would naturally be a good thing for him. But now, these were all uncertain factors, so he still had to rely on himself. Boom. In the blink of an eye, 3,000 incarnations appeared, and they immediately activated the karma law and the destruction law. 3,000 incarnations were equivalent to 6,000 profound meanings. How vast and shocking was the momentum! Even though the golden dragons had grasped the life law, he couldn't help but feel guilty, because this was no longer a one-on-one battle, but a battle of 1 against 3,000. 3,000 incarnations, that was equivalent to 3,000 Qin Fiangs. As for him, although he had grasped 6 profound meanings, he was just one person. It was a completely one-sided situation. Kill. The 3,000 incarnations battle cries shook the sky. 6,000 ultimate profound meanings, carrying a world-destroying divine might, shattered the sky for hundreds of millions of miles and charged toward the Golden Dragon clan leader. Damn it! The Golden Dragons cursed and activated the super forbidden technique, Divine Dragon's domain without hesitation. Boom! 6,000 profound meanings attacked, and the Divine Dragon's domain didn't even last half a breath before shattering on the spot. Super forbidden techniques weren't invincible, and there was a limit. Others might be helpless against the super forbidden techniques of the 3 races, but in front of Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. After all, Qin Feiyang had already stepped into the sovereign realm. The difference in cultivation no longer existed. If it were in the past when he was a sovereign, even with 3,000 incarnations, he wouldn't be able to break through the super forbidden technique. As the Divine Dragon's domain shattered, not only the Golden Dragons, but even the White and Black Dragons, whose Sea of Qi had almost recovered, were instantly drowned by the 6,000 profound meanings. Roar! Miserable cries rang out. Qin Feiyang once again witnessed the strength of the life law. Even with 6,000 profound meanings, he couldn't immediately kill the 3 of them. Li Feng was even more dumbfounded. Although he already had a good understanding of the various laws, this was his first time seeing the life law with his own eyes. This healing ability was definitely the strongest in the world, and there was no other. Hold on. There are 2 patriarchs nearby. They will rush over in a while. The Golden Dragon Patriarch's eyes flashed. He suddenly looked at the White Dragon Patriarch and Black Dragon Patriarch and shouted, "What? Ancestors?" When Qin Feiyang heard this, his gaze trembled slightly, and the 10 unfamiliar faces of the dragons involuntarily appeared in his mind. At that time, the Fire Qilin and Tan Wu had said that the unfamiliar faces of the 3 forbidden areas were all old antiques who had been in seclusion. It was possible that each of them had grasped an ultimate profound meaning. Although it wouldn't be the ultimate profound meaning of an ultimate law, this was very easy to determine. Because the little rabbit had long said that supreme existences who had grasped the ultimate profound meaning of an ultimate law were restricted from entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Therefore, among the people who entered this time, no matter which side they were from, there wouldn't be anyone who had grasped the ultimate profound meaning of an ultimate law. However, even if it was an ordinary ultimate law, it would be easy to instantly kill him and Li Feng. Moreover, they were 2 ancestors. If they really grasped the ultimate profound meaning, wouldn't they be doomed? Really? At the same time, the Black Dragon Patriarch and White Dragon Patriarch were also shocked. And, as early as yesterday, I already met them. The Golden Dragons nodded. This was great news for the Black Dragon Patriarch and the White Dragon Patriarch. Li Feng asked through voice transmission. Qin Dage, could he be scaring us? Scaring? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and his eyes flashed. He looked at the Golden Dragons and sneered. Since you already met yesterday, why didn't they come together? That's right. Why didn't they come together? The Black and White Dragons also looked at the Golden Dragons suspiciously. You think I'm scaring you? Haha. What a joke. The Golden Dragon Patriarch looked at Qin Feiyang and Li Feng and sneered. He said, they didn't come together because we also sensed the ripples of battle outside, so we split up to check it out. Chapter 3688. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. He had already concluded in his heart that this person was just scaring them. Let's not talk about anything else first. They had been fighting here for 3 days and 3 nights. And it was already the 4th day. Half of the 4th day had already passed. The battle of the 4 sovereign divine weapons had caused a huge commotion. If there were really people fighting on the other side, they would have already been alerted. Moreover, If there were really two ancestors, why would the golden dragons say it in front of him? After all, this was a huge advantage for them. There was no reason for him to do so. Anyone with a bit of intelligence would know that he would hide it from the other side first and wait for the two ancestors to come. When the other side was caught off guard, wouldn't that be a sure-win situation? But now, the golden dragons didn't mince words and didn't hide anything. What did this mean? It meant that he was scaring them and telling them to run for their lives. Still not running. Seems like you really want to die. The golden dragons sneered. Haha, your acting skills are not bad. But let me give you a piece of advice. Don't treat others as fools. Qin Feiyang sneered. The 3,000 incarnations once again activated the ultimacy. And this time, they activated the ultimacy of the Thunder Law and the War Law. What? He has already comprehended the ultimacy of the War Law. The Golden Dragon's trio's eyes trembled. What kind of monster was this? How long had it been since they last saw each other? He had actually comprehended another ultimacy. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before this lad could catch up with them, the supreme experts. Now, they were already no match for Qin Feiyang. When Qin Feiyang also became a supreme expert, wouldn't they be even more vulnerable? It was hard to imagine how this little bastard did it. In these short years, not only did he step into the sovereign great perfection from the undead realm, but he also comprehended two ultimacies of the Thunder Law and the War Law. This kind of growth speed was simply unprecedented in the past, and would never be surpassed in the future. The next time you want to scare someone, please use your brain first. Don't end up embarrassing yourself like a clown. You'll only embarrass yourself. Qin Feiyang sneered. Instantly, his four profound meanings shot towards the three of them. Are you really trying to scare him? The White Dragon and Black Dragon patriarchs frowned. Why are you still concerned about this now? The chief of the Golden Dragons shouted angrily. When the two heard this, their hearts sank. It was obvious that he was trying to scare Qin Feiyang. It was fine if he succeeded. But now he didn't scare the other party at all. At this point, they had no choice but to admit that this was a terrifying young man. Even at such a time, he could still maintain such a calm mind and calmly analyze and judge the truth of the other party's words. If it were anyone else, upon hearing that there were two patriarchs, they would have panicked and their first thought would be to escape immediately. In the past, without facing him head-on, they still felt that the rumors about Qin Feiyang outside were exaggerated. But now he finally understood it completely. This was an extremely terrifying, extremely dangerous, and extremely difficult enemy to deal with. That's right. At this moment, they no longer treated Qin Feiyang as a junior. Instead, they treated him as a real strong enemy, an opponent on the same level as them. Of course, right now, they didn't have the guts to still treat Qin Feiyang as a junior. But it seems that you don't have the chance to scare others anymore. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, the 3,000 clones activated the Super Forbidden Technique, 9 Underworld Dragon Flames. Super Forbidden Technique. The three of them trembled. Not only my Super Forbidden Technique, but also your Super Forbidden Technique, Divine Dragon Domain. This time you won't be able to escape. Qin Feiyang shouted. The 3,000 clones activated the Eye of Heaven and replicated the Divine Dragon Domain. The Super Forbidden Technique of the dragons, Divine Dragon Domain, was the same as the Qilin clan's Super Forbidden Technique, Qilin God Domain. Not only did it have an extremely strong defense, but it also had an extremely shocking lethality. 6,000 supreme laws of paramount profound truths, 6,000 ordinary laws of supreme profound meanings, 3,009 underworld dragon flames, and 3,000 divine dragon domains. Moreover, whether it was the various supreme laws, 9 underworld dragon flames, or divine dragon domain, they were all the most powerful means under the sovereign weapon and ultimate profound. Not to mention the opponent, even Li Feng, who was standing beside Qin Feiyang, couldn't help but tremble in fear when he saw such means. The rumors were true. In today's Sky Cloud realm, except for the Dragon King and the other lords of Forbidden Zones, no one was Qin Dage's opponent. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. All the supreme profound skills and super forbidden techniques flooded toward the three of them like a tide. Qin Feiyang, you won't have a good death. Let me tell you, don't even think about leaving the Sky Bell divine treasure alive. This is the place where your gods are buried. Explode. The three of them roared furiously one after another. Their huge divine dragon bodies exploded in the void immediately. Waves of destructive energy swept out in all directions like raging waves in the ocean. Self-destruct? Qin Feiyang and Li Feng's expressions changed drastically. They never thought that the three of them would self-destruct so decisively. Please. Qin Feiyang looked at the 3,000 incarnations, and immediately took Li Feng with him. They used the space-time step, turned around and flew away at lightning speed. Boom. The 3,000 incarnations attacked at the same time. And the power of laws roared out, forming a barrier that was as tall as the sky and blocked the explosion. Qin Dage. They're actually willing to self-destruct. Could it be that they left their divine souls outside? Li Feng was surprised. Obviously. Qin Feiyang was furious. After all, they were all formidable characters. Why were they so afraid of death? But there was nothing he could do. If the other party wanted to leave their divine souls outside, what could he do? He couldn't order them not to. Besides, no one would listen to his orders. He could only say that it was a waste of effort. No, it wasn't a waste of effort. There was also the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear. Qin Feiyang roared at the top of his lungs. Ancient castle, sword of the Grim Reaper, don't let the white dragon sword and the others escape. At the same time, with a heaven-shaking explosion, the barrier condensed from the power of laws by the 3,000 incarnations collapsed. It had to be said. The power of the self-destruction of a supreme expert could be described as devastating. It was countless times more terrifying than a super-forbidden technique. Even the 3,000 incarnations couldn't stop it, and were instantly turned into ashes. Fortunately, the 3,000 incarnations also helped Qin Feiyang and Li Feng stall for some time. Now that they had already escaped to a safe area, they turned around and looked at the apocalyptic scene. The two of them couldn't help but sweat profusely. In the future, when facing a supreme expert, they must not give the other party the chance to self-destruct. Otherwise, they would end up in mutual destruction. Clang. At this moment, the sword of the Grim Reaper flew above Qin Feiyang, swept up Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, and rushed to the battlefield where the ancient castle was located. Where's the golden dragon spear? Qin Feiyang asked. Don't think about subduing all of them at once. If the three sovereign divine weapons really want to fight with us, even if we keep them, we will have to pay a heavy price. Moreover, those two swords are still an uncertain factor. What if they suddenly betray us? So instead of drawing water with a bamboo basket, it's better to take a step back and meet up with the ancient castle first. For the time being, we can subdue the white dragon sword or the black dragon mirror. The sword of the Grim Reaper said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled, and he apologized. I'm sorry, I was too anxious. It's fine. Actually, I know what you mean. As long as we subdue the golden dragon spear, white dragon sword and black dragon mirror, these three sovereign divine weapons, we will have the ability to truly contend against the dragons in the future. But you have to remember, there are some things that cannot be rushed. Especially when facing the sovereign divine weapons, if we are not careful, not only might we not be able to subdue them, we might even cause ourselves to fall into a state of eternal damnation. The sword of the Grim Reaper warned. Qin Feiyang nodded. In any case, he had a full 1,000 years in the heavenly bell divine treasure, so he could take it slow. While they were talking, the sword of the Grim Reaper brought Qin Feiyang and Li Feng back to the battlefield where the ancient castle was located. The black dragon mirror and white dragon sword had already sensed the self-destruction of the three dragons, and were trying their best to break out of the encirclement. It was really as the sword of the Grim Reaper had said. The two sovereign divine weapons were ruthless, and the ancient castle, the golden battle sword, and the silver battle sword were already showing signs of being unable to stop them. The sword of the Grim Reaper secretly shouted, Ancient castle, let the black dragon mirror go, subdue the white dragon sword first. At the same time, the sword of the Grim Reaper condensed a barrier, protecting Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, and then directly charged into the battlefield, targeting the white dragon sword. who was the ancient castle. Hearing the words of the Sword of the Grim Reaper, they understood the purpose of the Sword of the Grim Reaper. Immediately, it ignored the black dragon mirror and charged towards the white dragon sword. What's going on? Seeing the black dragon mirror take the opportunity to escape, and the ancient castle and the Sword of the Grim Reaper did not stop them, the golden and silver battle swords could not help but be stunned. But soon, they understood the meaning of the ancient castle and the Sword of the Grim Reaper. You want to use us to subdue this sovereign divine weapon? Do you really think we're free fighters? The two sovereign divine weapons were immediately dissatisfied. Whether it was the dragons from before or this human brat, they were all sinister fellows. Qin Feiyang sensed that something was wrong and immediately shouted, "Seniors, I don't ask for your help, but I beg you not to interfere. After this junior will definitely thank you greatly." Sure enough, there were two uncertain factors. If at this time the two swords really wanted to interfere, then it would really be like using a wicker basket to draw water. "Thank you greatly? What kind of treasure do you think you have that can enter the eyes of our dignified sovereign divine weapon?" The golden and silver battle swords retreated from the battlefield, their tone filled with contempt. Only the ancient castle and the Sword of the Grim Reaper remained on the battlefield, firmly entangling the white dragon sword. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang realized that the golden dragon spear and the black dragon mirror had not really left. They were watching the battlefield from afar, as if they were looking for an opportunity to rescue the white dragon sword. The position of the two swords was unknown. The golden dragon spear and the black dragon mirror were hiding in the distance, eyeing them covetously. This caused the situation to become delicate. In short, the biggest trouble had come. Chapter 3689. Facing the questions thrown by the two swords, Qin Feiyang really had no way to answer, because he couldn't think of anything that could catch the eye of the sovereign divine weapon. In the past, when he subdued the horsetail whisk and the blood dragon blade, he had forced them to swear a blood oath. But now, the conditions didn't allow it. First of all, strength. He was unable to open the slaughter domain, so he lacked a method to threaten the sovereign divine weapon. The blood dragon blade, the horsetail whisk, and the sovereign divine weapon of the demon palace and the heavenly palace were all in the hands of the madman, the white-eyed wolf, and Yun Xiang. If the madman, the white-eyed wolf, Yun Xiang, and the master Jura had already come to meet them, it would be easy to deal with them and directly use force. But now, he only had the Sword of the Reaper and the castle, the two sovereign divine weapons. Secondly, there were the conditions. The black dragon mirror and the golden dragon spear were eyeing him covetously from the side, obviously not wanting to let him do as he wished. So, could he subdue the white dragon sword now? No. It should be said that whether or not there was a chance to subdue the white dragon sword now depended entirely on the will of these two swords. Actually, this wasn't the thing that worried him the most. What he was most worried about was that if these two swords changed sides and joined forces with the white dragon sword, and the other two sovereign divine weapons to deal with them, then the situation would be precarious. After all, at that time, it would be a 5 against 2 situation. 5 against 2, the castle and the Sword of the Reaper had to protect themselves while taking care of him, and Li Feng at the same time. Tell us, how do you want to bribe us? Our appetite is not ordinary. If you can't satisfy us, I'm afraid you will follow in the footsteps of the dragons and the other two. The threat of the golden and silver swords was no longer concealed. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. You don't want to listen to my kind words, do you? Do you want to force me to fall out with you? Fine. At most, I'll compromise now. After I meet up with everyone, I'll slowly settle the score with you. Qin Feiyang made a prompt decision and sent a sound transmission to the Sword of the Reaper and the castle. Prepare to retreat. Although he was extremely unwilling, for everyone's safety, he had to do this. He could ignore his own life, but he could not ignore the castle and the Sword of the Reaper. Especially the ancient castle. It had been helping him all these years. He couldn't let anything happen to it. All right. The two sovereigns' divine weapons replied. In fact, they also had the idea of retreating temporarily. The current situation was too passive, but out of consideration for Qin Feiyang, they did not mention it, because they knew Qin Feiyang too well. After putting in so much effort, he ended up with nothing. He must be feeling terrible. This was true love. While Qin Feiyang was thinking about them, they were also thinking about Qin Feiyang's feelings. Only the white dragon sword was fighting against the castle and the sword of the Thanatos. Therefore, it was easy for the castle and the sword of the Thanatos to leave. Boom! The two sovereign divine weapons shook off the white dragon sword and instantly arrived in front of Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. Then, they took the two of them away without looking back. This sudden turn of events not only stunned the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear, but even the two swords were caught off guard. When they came back to their senses, the white dragon sword immediately rushed to meet up with the black dragon mirror and the golden dragon spear. You want to leave? The golden and silver swords seemed to be angry when they came back to their senses. They immediately chased after Qin Feiyang and the others. What should we do? The black dragon mirror asked. The golden dragon spear pondered for a moment and said, "This might be a good opportunity. Let's follow them." Whoosh! The three sovereign divine weapons also chased after them. Li Feng turned around and saw the five sovereign divine weapons chasing after him. His face was filled with surprise and he said, "Are they going to team up again? These two uncertain factors are really troublesome." Qin Feiyang was furious. If it were the blood dragon blade, the horsetail whisk, the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear, the three sovereign divine weapons, they would not be able to escape from him. He would settle this score with them sooner or later. An hour later, the five sovereign divine weapons were still chasing after them. They were all sovereign divine weapons, so their speed was about the same. The ancient castle and the Grim Reaper's sword could not shake off the five sovereign divine weapons. The five sovereign divine weapons could not catch up to them. However, they could not keep chasing like this. After all, there were other dangers in the Sky Bell divine treasure. If they encountered the dragons, the Feng people, or the Kirin clan, they would not be able to escape. Even if we encounter people, we hope to meet our allies. The Grim Reaper's sword sighed. If the other party wanted to keep chasing, they could not do anything. If they stopped now, they might face the danger of the five sovereign divine weapons joining forces. In the blink of an eye, another day passed. Along the way, they did not encounter the dragons, the Feng people, or the Kirin clan. They did not encounter the heavenly cloud sea, the beast emperors, or the divine beasts of the land of buried gods. They survived the day without any danger. As for the human-shaped skeletons and ferocious beast skeletons, they encountered many of them. However, in the face of the sovereign divine weapons, they were not qualified to interfere. They could not even get close to Qin Feiyang and the others. In the evening, the sky darkened. The heavenly bell divine treasure gradually sank into deep darkness. When the castle and the Grim Reaper's sword took Qin Feiyang and fled to the sky above a lake, a strong sense of uneasiness suddenly rose in their hearts. However, they were not sure where this uneasiness came from. The lake was hundreds of thousands of miles long, like a vast sea. The lake water was a strange dark green. Around the lake, there were endless towering mountains, but it was no different from other places. It was incomparably dilapidated and desolate. Haha! You actually fled here, aren't you courting death? Behind, the golden and silver swords laughed. Hearing this, not only Qin Feiyang and Li Feng, but also the castle, the Grim Reaper's sword and the white dragon sword, the three sovereign divine weapons, could not help but be surprised. Old devil, help us stop the two humans in front. The golden sword roared. Crash! In the center of the lake below, a wave suddenly rose. A dark green light rushed out of the lake and blocked in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Waves of divine power rushed toward Qin Feiyang and the others. What? Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. Another sovereign-level divine weapon. Could it be that these sovereign divine weapons were the ones controlling the Sky Bell divine treasure? It was a square cauldron. It was dark green all over, about the size of a palm, and there were ghost-like heads engraved on all four sides, exuding a terrifying cold aura. Humans. It seems that the divine treasure has been opened. The green cauldron let out a hoarse voice and immediately turned into a giant cauldron, exuding a ferocious power that could destroy heaven and earth. Kill it. The Grim Reaper's sword roared. Boom! The castle and the Grim Reaper's sword erupted with monstrous power and blasted toward the green cauldron. With a loud clang, the green cauldron was successfully sent flying, but at the same time, the castle and the Grim Reaper's sword paused for a moment. It was also during this pause that the 5 sovereign divine weapons, the golden sword, the silver sword, the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear, caught up and stopped Qin Feiyang and the others. From the looks of it, they really want to join forces? Li Feng glanced at the 5 sovereign divine weapons, his face slightly pale. Now, with the addition of the green cauldron, there were 6 sovereign divine weapons. How could they fight this? It was over. Run. Continue. Let's see where you can run to. The golden sword snickered. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened slightly. These 2 sovereign divine weapons were really annoying. But suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. The 2 swords didn't know him well, but the white dragon sword, the 3 sovereign divine weapons, knew him well. Instead of trying to persuade these 2 swords, it was better to persuade the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear. As long as he could persuade these 3 sovereign divine weapons, he could naturally turn defeat into victory. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. White dragon sword, black dragon mirror, golden dragon spear, can you listen to me? Why don't we join forces and suppress them first? What? Now that you have no way out, you're asking for help from us. Didn't you want to subdue us yesterday? The white dragon sword sneered. Back then in the Een Devil Land, it had been played around with by Qin Feiyang. It had never forgotten this humiliation. Actually, you don't have to hate me like this. Because my enemy is the dragons, not you. We can be friends who can rely on each other and fight side by side. They don't know what kind of person I, Qin Feiyang, am, but don't you know? To friends, to comrades, I can protect them at all costs. Look at the blood dragon blade, look at the horsetail whisk. How good are we now? I respect them, and they respect me. But what about the dragons? What can they give you? They can't give you anything. Instead, they only know how to ask from you. Because you are sovereign divine weapons and have invincible fighting strength, they only want to display your value. Once you lose your value, you will inevitably become cannon fodder in their hands. In other words, they are only using you and have no feelings for you at all. For example, the blood dragon blade. Back in the Sea of Heavenly Clouds, when the Dragon King asked me to hand over the blood dragon blade, I found that the Dragon King already wanted to kill the blood dragon blade. But I'm different. I sincerely respect you. It's also because of this that I risked defending the Dragon King, to protect the blood dragon blade. Qin Feiyang sighed. The 3 sovereign divine weapons fell silent. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang struck while the iron was hot and continued to persuade them secretly. If you choose me now, I promise that you will never regret your choice today. I will use practical actions to prove my sincerity and determination to you. Moreover, you know that I have an independent world. Tell me the truth. In the future, the dragons, the Feng people, and the Kirin clan may not be stronger than me. We humans have a famous saying that a good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Think about it carefully. Between me and the dragons, who is the good tree that you need the most? Qin Feiyang tried his best to persuade him, and his words were filled with confidence. For him, surpassing the dragons, the Feng people, and the Kirin clan was only a matter of time. Chapter 3690. Are you sure you are talented? However, this will have to wait until you have fully grown up. The black dragon mirror sneered. My current strength is obvious to all of you. Apart from you sovereign divine weapons, there is also Dragon King and Feng Ho. Who is my opponent? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. You underestimate the heritage of the Forbidden Zones too much. If it weren't for the Dominator weapons in the castle helping you, any expert from the Forbidden Lands who grasped the ultimate profound would be able to kill you instantly. If you want to truly have a place in the Sky Cloud realm, you can only become an existence like Dragon King and the others. The golden dragon spear coldly snorted. I know. I also believe that I can do it. Qin Feiyang said firmly. The 3 sovereign divine weapons fell silent again. According to the current situation, Qin Feiyang indeed has the potential. However, It is really hard to say what will happen in the future. If they choose Qin Feiyang now, it is tantamount to betraying the Dragon King. If in the future, Qin Feiyang accidentally dies, then who can they find to reason with? The Dragon King will definitely not let them go at that time. In other words, this is a bet. They don't dare to gamble, nor can they afford to gamble. Why are you so quiet? Where is the arrogance from before? The two sovereign divine swords looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously, their words full of ridicule. Qin Feiyang looked at the two sovereign divine swords, then looked at the green cauldron. His eyes sank slightly, and suddenly looked at the white dragon sword and the three sovereign divine swords. A drop of blood essence broke out of his body. What are you doing? The six sovereign divine weapons looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. I, Qin Feiyang, make a blood oath. If today you choose me, Qin Feiyang, I, Qin Feiyang, will protect you with my life. I will never betray you, never abandon you, and share honor and disgrace with you. Qin Feiyang shouted. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Three oaths descended from the sky, but they did not enter Qin Feiyang's body. This was because the white dragon sword, one of the three sovereign divine weapons, had not agreed to choose Qin Feiyang. As long as they agreed, the blood oath would be considered complete. The hearts of the three sovereign divine weapons trembled. I believe that all of you should be familiar with the blood oath by now. Once an oath is made, it can never be broken. This is my sincerity, my determination. I, Qin Feiyang, am willing to live and die with you. If I violate this oath, I will be punished by the heavens. Qin Feiyang spoke word by word. His voice was sonorous and forceful. He stared at the three sovereign divine weapons and roared. Is this not enough to move you? Every word was like a bolt of lightning that struck the minds of the three sovereign divine weapons, causing them to struggle in their hearts. It had always been them who used their own lives to protect others. They had always been the only ones who were betrayed and abandoned by humans after losing their value. But now, there was a human who was willing to protect them with his life, and he would never betray them, never abandon them, and live and die with them. He had even made a blood oath. As sovereign divine weapons, they had eternal lifespan. But in this eternity, this was the first time they truly felt a person's sincerity and affection. This feeling of being cared for, being protected, being treated as a comrade, and being treated as a comrade was very warm. So he was secretly persuading them to surrender. Good. Humans are indeed insidious and cunning. The golden sword and the silver sword also finally came to a realization. Divine might surged forth as they roared. Old devil, lend us a hand. As their voices fell, they immediately charged toward Qin Feiyang and the others. With a loud clang, the green cauldron also joined the battle, and charged toward the castle, and the sword of the Grim Reaper. It seems that we can only fight to the death. The castle took a deep breath. Then let's fight. As long as it is vigorous, what is there to be afraid of? The sword of the Grim Reaper laughed loudly. Boom. The castle and the sword of the Grim Reaper left behind a barrier, and charged toward the three sovereign divine weapons. As long as it is vigorous, what is there to be afraid of? The three sovereign divine weapons murmured. It seemed that in these endless years, they had gradually lost their courage and fighting spirit. As sovereign divine weapons, the strongest existences in the world, they did not even have this courage? Wasn't this a joke? Okay. I promise you. In the future we will live and die together, sharing honor and disgrace. The Black Dragon Mirror said. As his voice fell, one of the seals was completed and merged into Qin Feiyang's body. The White Dragon Sword and the Golden Dragon Spear were shocked. He actually chose Qin Feiyang? He has a point. In the Dragon Clan, their demands and our sacrifices are taken for granted. They have never really thought about us. They have never respected our wishes. Now that someone has made such an oath, what is there to hesitate about? As for what will happen in the future, I dare not say. But at least for now, my heart is very warm and touched. After saying this, the Black Dragon Sword also left a barrier around Qin Feiyang and Li Feng before immediately joining the battle. The situation was instantly evened out. 3-on-3. The pressure on the castle and the sword of the Grim Reaper was greatly reduced. Warm and touched? Indeed. I have never felt this way before. Now that I have, why should I resist? The golden dragon spear laughed out loud and shouted, Qin Feiyang, this sovereign also agrees to your request. However, you must remember today's blood oath. If there comes a day when you do something that lets this sovereign down, this sovereign will definitely not let you off easily. The second seal was completed. A smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. He looked at the golden dragon spear and said, If I really do something to betray you, the blood oath will erase me. I feel much better now. Then let's kill the enemies. The golden dragon spear let out a heroic laugh, and also left a barrier around Qin Feiyang and Li Feng before immediately joining the battle. For on 3, the balanced situation was immediately reversed. What do you think? Qin Feiyang looked at Bai Longjian. Bai Longjian snorted coldly. You should know how much I hate you, right? I know. But at that time in the Een Devil Land, facing your pursuit, I definitely had to think of a way to escape. I couldn't just stand there and let you kill me. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Bai Longjian remained silent. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and bowed. I, Qin Feiyang, rarely bow my head. Today, I will take the initiative to bow my head to you. Please forgive my previous offense. Looking at this scene, Bai Longjian's expression did not change, but no one knew what was going on in his heart. Anyway, he was still silent. I have seen the prince of the White Dragon clan. The patriarch of the White Dragon clan was forced by me to self-destruct. May I ask? Don't you feel wrong to work for them? I know. This is the Dragon King's order. You have no choice but to listen. But doesn't this reflect that the Dragon King has never regarded the true value of your Dominator divine weapons from the beginning to the end? I think that in his eyes, the significance of your Dominator divine weapons is nothing more than a sharp blade in the hands of the dragons. Think about it. Will such a person truly trust you and respect you? Qin Feiyang smiled and said. Although it was not so impassioned and inspiring, every sentence hit the nail on the head. Bai Longjian finally reacted and asked, Will you truly respect us? Trust us? Of course. Time will prove everything. But the premise is that you have to give me a chance to prove it. Qin Feiyang nodded. People's hearts change. Bai Longjian said meaningfully. This also depends on who it is. Qin Feiyang smiled. Haha. Bai Longjian laughed loudly. Qin Feiyang looked at it expectantly. I have to admit that you have moved this sovereign. All right. Let's give each other a chance. Let time prove everything. Clang. As the voice fell, Bai Longjian's divine power surged, and also left a barrier around Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. Then it attacked the 2 battle swords and the green cauldron. The third seal was finally completed. For Qin Feiyang, this was even happier than obtaining the epitome of the war law and the thunder law. Subduing 3 Dominator divine weapons was something that others would never be able to accomplish. But now he did it. With the addition of these 3 Dominator divine weapons, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Bai Longjian, Black Dragon Mirror, Golden Dragon Spear, Horsetail Whisk, Blood Dragon Blade, Ancient Castle, Thanatos Sword, plus the Sky Palace and Demon Palace's Dominator divine weapons. Now he already had 9 Dominator divine weapons. Plus the Slaughter Domain. With his current foundation, even if he returned to the Sky Cloud realm now, he would be able to compete with the Forbidden Zone. The human race already had the foundation to not fear the 3 Forbidden Zones. Similarly, also because of the betrayal of the Blood Dragon Blade, White Dragon Sword, Black Dragon Mirror and Golden Dragon Spear, the strength of the dragons had plummeted. However, it wasn't over yet. He wanted to nibble away the strength of the dragons step by step, disintegrate the dragon's foundation, and let the dragons walk towards destruction step by step. Li Feng, who was beside him, silently witnessed the entire process. In his heart, he admired and feared Qin Feiyang. Although the process of persuading the 3 Dominator divine weapons was very difficult, the righteousness that Qin Feiyang showed and the respect for the Dominator divine weapons was something that no one could compare to. Moreover, there was no deception. A pure heart. Was this Qin Dage's way of doing things? Heart. True feelings, it seemed simple. But in this world full of fame and wealth, full of selfish desires, it was too difficult to maintain this original heart. especially in the face of the Dominator Divine Weapon. The Dominator Divine Weapon was the strongest divine weapon in the world. Everyone could only see their strength and the fame and wealth that they could bring to themselves. In other words, it was all to satisfy their own selfish desires that they yearned for the Dominator Divine Weapon. But the man in front of him was different. Li Feng could clearly feel that Qin Feiyang persuaded the White Dragon Sword and the other Dominator Divine Weapons mainly for the sake of the entire human race, because the status of the human race in the Sky Cloud realm was too weak, and they could face the risk of extinction at any time. Someone had to stand up and lead the human race. Of course, there was definitely some selfishness. After all, Qin Feiyang was not a saint, but the public had to be bigger than the private. Chapter 3691. Boom. Crack. Now that it was 5 against 3, the Golden Sword and the Silver Sword were extremely annoyed. They never thought that it would turn out like this. The Green Cauldron was even more depressed. It came here for no reason, and asked for its help for no reason. Alright. For the sake of their many years of friendship, it helped. However, why did the 3 sovereign divine weapons, which were originally opposing the 2 humans, suddenly side with them? Until now, it still didn't know what was going on. Qin Feiyang looked at the battlefield, his eyes flashing. The ancient castle, the sword of the Grim Reaper, the White Dragon Sword, the Golden Dragon Spear, and the Black Dragon Realm all had a protective barrier. The protection of the 5 barriers, coupled with the ancient castle and the other 5 sovereign divine weapons, had deliberately moved the battlefield far away, so now his and Li Feng's safety was guaranteed. However, it was not easy for the ancient castle and the other 5 sovereign divine weapons to severely injure the Golden Sword, the Silver Sword, and the Green Cauldron, because, in terms of numbers, they did not have the advantage of 2 against 1. One had to know, even in a 2 against 1 situation, it would take a lot of time to defeat the existence of the sovereign divine weapon. For example, in the process of fighting with the Blood Hall, the ancient castle had repeatedly used its own strength to stall the 2 sovereign divine weapons. Of course, if the ancient castle and the others were given enough time now, in the end, none of the 3 sovereign divine weapons would be able to escape. But at present, Qin Feiyang was worried about one thing. Things would change if he delayed. He didn't dare to drag on like this. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He looked at the Green Cauldron and said, "You have nothing to do with this. If you leave now, I won't make things difficult for you." As long as the Green Cauldron didn't interfere, the 5 against 2 situation would be completely crushed. Old devil, I don't want to believe his words. He even subdued the 3 sovereign divine weapons one by one. He definitely won't let us go. Don't worry. With such a big commotion, it will soon alert our old friends nearby. When they all arrive, won't it be easy to kill this human? The Golden Sword laughed sinisterly. What did he say? Old friends? Is there a sovereign divine weapon nearby? Li Feng was surprised. Qin Feiyang felt a chill in his heart. As a sovereign weapon, the Golden Sword wouldn't be so childish as to scare them. He had to end the battle quickly. Otherwise, if he really alarmed those so-called old friends nearby, the situation would become very bad. Suddenly, Bai Longjian opened his mouth and said somewhat angrily, "Old devil, we've been fighting for so long, yet you still haven't recognized me?" Lu Ding was bewildered. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other. What was going on? Could it be that Bai Longjian and Lu Ding knew each other? Bai Longjian said, "The last time the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasury opened, the dragons, the Feng people, and the Qilin race joined forces to forcefully subdue you. Do you still remember who saved you from their hands and returned you your freedom?" Hearing this, the Green Cauldron trembled and said angrily, "So it's you. You're with them." "Not bad. That's me." Bai Longjian replied proudly. "Bastard. I'm going to kill you." Green Cauldron was instantly enraged, as if he had seen an enemy. "Kill me? Let's see if you have the ability." Bai Longjian snorted disdainfully and continued, "I'm telling you this now, not because I want to continue being your enemy. I want you to remember who saved you from the dragons, the Feng people, and the Qilin race. I remember it was a human, and he seems to be a very amazing human." The dragons, the Feng people, and the Qilin race seemed to call him the Feather Emperor. Lu Ding said intermittently as he recalled. Feather Emperor? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Wasn't this the ancestor? The ancestor actually saved this green cauldron from the dragons, the Feng people, and the Qilin race back then? It seems that your memory is not bad. Then I'll tell you now. The young man standing over there called Qin Feiyang is the direct descendant of the Feather Emperor. Bai Longjian said. What? Lu Ding shook slightly. His divine sense enveloped Qin Feiyang and asked, You're the descendant of the Feather Emperor? Yes. The Feather Emperor is this junior's ancestor. Qin Feiyang nodded. Lu Ding asked suspiciously, But why do you have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon? Qin Feiyang was about to speak. Bai Longjian spoke first. It's a long story. I don't have time to explain it to you now. The Feather Emperor saved your life back then, and gave you your freedom. Now that you've met his descendant, you're not going to repay kindness with enmity, are you? How can you prove that he's the descendant of the Feather Emperor? If you can prove it, I'll immediately retreat to the side. Lu Ding said angrily. Bai Longjian pondered for a moment and asked, Qin Feiyang, do you have the Feather Emperor's token? No. As you know, I've only seen the ancestor a few times. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then this is really difficult. Bai Longjian was a little annoyed. Old devil, don't be fooled by them. They're just taking advantage of your gratitude to the Feather Emperor. The golden and silver swords roared. You're courting death. Hearing this, Lu Ding was furious and attacked Bai Longjian crazily. Bastard. Although he doesn't have the token, he and the Feather Emperor both have the surname Qin. Even if their bloodlines are different, they still belong to the same lineage. With your strength, as long as you look carefully, you'll definitely be able to recognize it. Bai Longjian roared. Hearing this, Lu Ding suppressed the anger in his heart and landed outside the barrier with a clang, saying, Do you dare to let me check your bloodline power? Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded. Okay. The green cauldron unleashed its full power, smashing apart the barriers set up by the 5 sovereign divine weapons. It then released a terrifying divine aura, isolating the shockwaves from the battle outside. Qin Dage, be careful. Li Feng secretly became alert. Now, if Lu Ding suddenly attacked them, even the 5 sovereign divine weapons wouldn't be able to save them in time. Don't panic. Qin Feiyang comforted Li Feng and looked at Lu Ding calmly. Lu Ding's divine sense instantly shrouded Qin Feiyang. Time passed by bit. The 5 sovereign divine weapons took the opportunity to attack the golden and silver swords crazily. The 2 sovereign divine weapons wailed in pain. Cracks began to appear on the surface of his body. This was a situation where 5 against 2. There was no chance to escape. A moment later, Lu Ding retracted his divine sense and said with a bit of excitement, Your bloodline power does contain some of the Feather Emperor's aura. There's no need to lie to you. I'm really the descendant of the Feather Emperor. And it was the ancestor who personally sent me to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Qin Feiyang smiled. Lu Ding was silent for a while and slowly retracted his murderous aura, saying, I didn't expect to meet his descendant after so many years. This should be the so-called fate. How is the Feather Emperor now? The ancestor is doing well. If not for the fact that the ancestor has mastered the ultimate meaning of the strongest law, he would have come personally. Qin Feiyang smiled. He has already mastered the ultimate meaning of the strongest law. It seems that he hasn't been idle all these years. All right. I was blind before. Please forgive me. Lu Ding said with an apologetic smile, after feeling a little emotional. It's okay. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hand. All right. Since you're the descendant of the Feather Emperor, I'll give you a hand now. Lu Ding said and immediately sent Qin Feiyang and Li Feng to a safe area. Just in case, he deliberately left a protective barrier and then turned to go to the battlefield. What is he going to do? Li Feng was surprised. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. When Green Cauldron returned to the battlefield, the 5 Dominator weapons were shocked. Green Cauldron went straight for the gold and silver swords. Old devil, what are you doing? Do you really believe their nonsense? The 2 swords roared angrily. The aura of the bloodline power can't be wrong. Lu Ding snorted coldly. The sword of Thanatos, white dragon sword, black dragon mirror, and golden dragon spear came back to their senses and couldn't help but laugh. Together with Lu Ding, they crazily attacked the two swords. The situation of 6 against 3 was even more ruthless. The two swords were full of regret. First, white dragon sword, black dragon mirror, and golden dragon spear surrendered, and now this old devil turned hostile. How did a sure-win situation turn out like this? Stop fighting. We'll break if you continue. We'll beg for mercy. Please let us go. In less than 100 breaths, the two swords began to beg. They couldn't escape and couldn't win. What else could they do but beg for mercy? Now you know to beg for mercy? When you were chasing us, didn't you look like you were going to kill us? And you want us to fulfill your request? Who do you think you are? The sword of Thanatos sneered. He didn't buy it. He had to take revenge. White dragon sword, black dragon mirror, and golden dragon spear were also full of resentment. At that time, if it weren't for these two bastards interfering, how could Qin Feiyang force the three of them to self-destruct? He was not a gentleman if he did not take revenge. He had to pay the price for being arrogant. Kacha, after another fierce beating, the two swords shattered into pieces, and the divine light dimmed. Really, don't hit us anymore. We're all broken. Please. We know we were wrong. Please give us a chance. The two swords begged endlessly. Then are you still arrogant? White dragon sword snorted coldly. I don't dare anymore. The two swords trembled. The sword of Thanatos asked. Then do you still need us to give you treasures that can enter your eyes? No. We were just joking. How would we dare to ask for it? The two great war swords obeyed, as humble as their grandsons. If I don't beat you up, you won't be honest. The sword of Thanatos coldly snorted, erased the battle fluctuations in this world, and shouted, Qin Feiyang, come here. Done. Hearing the voice of the sword of Thanatos, the two immediately flew to the center of the battlefield. The distance was too far for the naked eye to see, but soon, they saw the two swords surrounded by the 6 sovereigns' divine weapons. Looking at the two swords that were in a sorry state, Li Feng was stunned, and said with a wry smile, originally, they were going to help us suppress them. It seems that the sovereign divine weapons here are all in their own places, and there is no real friendship. Qin Feiyang nodded. Let alone the two great swords, even he was quite surprised to see this scene. Chapter 3692. Landing beside the ancient castle. Qin Feiyang looked at the two great swords and laughed. You didn't expect it to fall into my hands so quickly, right? The world is unpredictable. The world is unpredictable. The two great swords laughed embarrassedly. Humph. Qin Feiyang snorted from his nose and said, You should be glad that I can't enter the Black Tortoise realm now. Otherwise I would have made you stay in the Soul Sealing Valley for a while. Soul Sealing Valley. White dragon sword, black dragon mirror, and golden dragon spear heard this and couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Back then, Qi Xiong and the others ambushed Qin Feiyang and the others. In the end, they were betrayed by the blood dragon blade, and all the patriarchs were seriously injured, and their souls were suppressed in the Soul Sealing Valley. Although they didn't see it with their own eyes, when the Golden Dragon Chief and the others returned to the dragon's nest, they also heard about it. A huge cesspool. The stench was overwhelming. In such a place, not to mention ordinary people, even they, as sovereign divine weapons, would change their expressions upon hearing the news. However, Green Cauldron, 2 battle swords. Li Feng, however, was a little suspicious. Although Li Feng was very familiar with Qin Feiyang, he knew very little about the situation in the Black Tortoise realm. But from Qin Feiyang's tone, he could tell that it should be a very terrifying place. Qin Feiyang calmed down, looked at the 2 great swords and said, Now you have 2 choices. What choice? The 2 great swords were suspicious and nervous. First, submit to me. Second, destroy. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. When the 2 great swords heard this, they couldn't help but feel disheartened. In fact, they had already guessed that Qin Feiyang might force them to submit, but in their hearts, they couldn't help but feel a trace of luck. In the end, it turned out that they were thinking too much. Not willing? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. No, no. The two great swords hurriedly denied. You don't have to deny it. I can understand your feelings. After all, you are sovereign divine weapons, the strongest divine weapons in the world. Submitting to others is a disgrace. However, you asked for it. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to consider. 3, 2, 1. Qin Feiyang began to count. The golden sword shouted. Can't you count a bit slower? Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear and said indifferently, Time's up. Please make your decision. The two great swords were incomparably sullen. The fate of a dominator's divine weapon was actually being controlled by a human brat. It seems that you have chosen destruction. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. No, no. We choose to submit. The golden sword hastily roared. Are you really going to submit? The silver sword was surprised. Brother, don't worry. This is just a temporary measure. Think about it. What in this world can control the freedom of our sovereign divine weapon? The golden sword secretly sneered. I see. The silver sword suddenly understood. First, he would pretend to submit and wait for his body to recover before finding an opportunity to escape. The golden sword let out a deep sigh and said righteously, Quickly drip your blood on it and claim it as your master. We won't resist. Drip blood on it? Qin Feiyang smiled. Did they really think he was a 3-year-old child? What? The two great swords were suspicious. There's no need to do such a meaningless act. I need you to make a blood oath to be forever loyal to me, Qin Feiyang. If you have the slightest intention to betray me, your soul will be destroyed. Qin Feiyang said. Blood oath again? The two great swords were shocked. Previously, when this human faced the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror and the golden dragon spear, he also made a blood oath. It seemed to be a bit different from ordinary oaths. Could it really come true? Impossible. Hurry up. The Grim Reaper's sword urged. Okay. The two great swords responded repeatedly and made a blood oath one after another according to Qin Feiyang's method. Qin Feiyang's face finally showed a trace of a smile. First, the white dragon sword, the black dragon mirror, and the golden dragon spear were moved by him and abandoned the darkness for the light. Now, these two great swords were forced to make a blood oath. In this way, he had obtained 5 sovereign divine weapons. He thought that this time, it might not bode well for him. But he didn't expect that the result would be a complete victory. Now, the ancient castle, the Grim Reaper's sword, the horsetail whisk, the blood dragon blade, plus the sovereign divine weapons of the demon palace and the sky palace, as well as the white dragon sword. These 5 sovereign divine weapons. Now, he had 11 sovereign divine weapons. Such a foundation had already surpassed the dragons at their peak. This was because even at their peak, the dragon clan only had 10 sovereign weapons. However, he couldn't be careless. After all, the human race was facing the 3 forbidden areas. It wasn't just the dragons. Besides, Long Chen had also entered the Sky Bell Divine Treasure this time. With Long Chen's ability and strength, he would probably obtain a lot of good fortune. There was one more thing. The Grim Reaper's sword, the 2 sovereign divine weapons of the Sky Palace and the Demon Palace, were only temporarily lent to him by Yin Zhongtian and the others. So he had to continue working hard. Qin Feiyang suddenly looked at the 2 great swords and said with an incomparably serious expression, Let me tell you, don't be too lucky, the blood oath will really come true. After all, it wasn't easy to subdue them. If they were killed by the heavenly tribulation, it would be too much of a pity. The 2 great swords didn't pay much attention to it at first, but seeing Qin Feiyang's serious attitude, they couldn't help but become nervous. Was he really not scaring them? I'm really not scaring you. There was once a sovereign divine weapon that was killed on the spot by the heavenly tribulation because it violated the blood oath. If you don't believe me, you can try. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the 2 great swords really didn't dare to try. All right. Seeing that you are sovereign divine weapons, I will waste a little more time and personally verify it for you. Qin Feiyang really didn't want to see the 2 great swords die, because of a trace of luck in their hearts. He turned to Li Feng and said, Go and find a human-shaped skeleton. All right. Li Feng nodded, turned around, and used an auxiliary divine art to disappear at the end of the mountain range in front of him. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. It was really troublesome to verify it on the spot. If it weren't for the fact that the other party was a sovereign divine weapon, he wouldn't have bothered to do this. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Ding and bowed again. Thank you, senior. No problem. Lu Ding smiled. Qin Feiyang glanced at Bai Longjian, then looked at Lu Ding curiously and asked, "What happened back then?" Back then, I accidentally encountered the Kirin clan, the Feng people, and the dragons. At that time, there were a total of 6 of them, and they all carried sovereign divine weapons with them. Bai Longjian was one of them. With 6 sovereign divine weapons, I was definitely not their match. But at the last moment, your ancestor, the Feather Emperor, appeared with a group of experts and saved me from their hands. Lu Ding explained. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. At that time, I thought that the Feather Emperor would make me submit like the dragons, the Feng people, and the Kirin clan. But I didn't expect that he would let me choose for myself. And even if I chose to leave in the end, he didn't make things difficult for me. So all these years, I have always remembered his kindness. Lu Ding smiled. It's really fate. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. No. To be exact, this was karma. Back then, the Feather Emperor saved Lu Ding because of karma. Now Lu Ding helped him because of karma. If it weren't for the kindness of the ancestor back then, how could today's situation be resolved? Karma was indeed everywhere. Lu Ding smiled and said, Since this matter is over, I will take my leave first. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and hurriedly looked at Lu Ding. Senior, are you not interested in the outside world at all? Lu Ding was stunned. I know that Senior likes to be free and unrestrained. But look at the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, what is here? Are you willing to stay in this place in obscurity for the rest of your life? If Senior trusts me, why don't you leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasure with me? I promise that I won't restrict Senior's freedom. Everything is up to Senior's wishes. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and bowed, his face full of sincerity. Lu Ding was silent for a while and chuckled. Thank you for thinking so highly of me. Let's meet again if fate allows. After saying that, he disappeared at the end of the world without looking back. What a pity. Qin Feiyang sighed. Don't be so greedy. You're still not satisfied with us joining. Bai Longjian snorted coldly. I'm not greedy. I really feel that for a sovereign divine weapon like him who knows how to repay kindness, leaving him in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure is really burying his value. Qin Feiyang sighed. That's true. Bai Longjian muttered. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath, looked at Bai Longjian and the other 2 sovereign divine weapons, and said with a smile, From now on we're family. Please take care of us. Hypocrite. Bai Longjian despised him. How am I hypocritical? Qin Feiyang felt wronged. Had they ever seen a man as sincere as him? All right. There was still a generation gap between him and these sovereign divine weapons. After all, he was still young. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, looked at Bai Longjian and the other 2 sovereign divine weapons, and said with a smile, Back to the topic, I'll have to trouble the 3 seniors to be a good person until the end. What do you mean? Bai Longjian, Black Dragon Mirror, and Golden Dragon Spear were suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, The dragons don't know that you're already with me, so I need you to continue to hide among the dragons. You want the scene of the Blood Dragon Blade to happen again? Black Dragon Mirror asked. Qin Feiyang nodded. 3 sovereign divine weapons hiding among the dragons. The effect would definitely be more explosive than the Blood Dragon Blade. This, Bai Longjian, Black Dragon Mirror, and Golden Dragon Spear were a little hesitant. Don't worry. Those who know about today's matter are all present. Eye Castle, and the Sword of Thanatos will definitely not say anything. Green Cauldron obviously doesn't like the dragons either. Li Feng hates the dragons even more than I do, so he won't say anything. As for these 2 things, Qin Feiyang glanced at the 2 swords. Can you speak properly? What do you mean by things? The 2 swords expressed their protest. They were all sovereign divine weapons, but the difference in treatment was too big, right? He was filled with respect for the ancient castle, the Sword of the Grim Reaper, and the white dragon sword. But they treated them with a cold face. How could they be like this? Chapter 3693. Qin Feiyang ignored them and looked at the three sovereign divine weapons with a smile. These two are controlled by the blood oath, so they won't dare to say anything. Even if you return to the dragons and face the Dragon King, you won't be in any danger. Of course, if the Dragon King notices anything or faces any danger, you don't need to ask me. Make your own decision. In short, the prerequisite for completing the mission is to ensure your own safety. Qin Feiyang added. Since you've already said so much, what else can we say? Fine, we're already on your pirate ship. The three sovereign divine weapons smiled helplessly. Cough cough. Am I on a pirate ship? Qin Feiyang was helpless. Gubberg said, since we're going to continue hiding among the dragons, it's best that we part ways now. That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the three sovereign divine weapons. And when you see us in the future, you have to treat us as enemies like before. We don't need you to remind us. Take care of yourself. Don't die in the Sky Bell divine treasure before the dragons are destroyed. The three divine weapons of the sovereigns turned around and flew away at lightning speed. Qin Feiyang watched the three sovereign divine weapons leave with a faint smile on his face. You did well this time. You didn't force them to surrender but chose to persuade them. If you force sovereign divine weapons like them, you might not get what you want. Gubberg smiled approvingly. I just thought of it on the spot. After all, sovereign divine weapons have feelings too. As long as you show them your sincerity, I believe they will see it. Qin Feiyang smiled. Keep up the good work. With that, Gubberg returned to Qin Feiyang's Qi with the sword of Thanatos. Now, only Qin Feiyang and the two sovereign divine weapons were left. Ever since he left, the two sovereign divine weapons had been feeling uneasy. Please don't be true. Otherwise, I'll have to work like a horse for this human brat. As a dominator divine weapon, of course it would want to save face. Qin Feiyang cut his finger, and 2 drops of golden purple dragon blood fell on the two sovereign divine weapons. The two sovereign divine weapons didn't resist. Master recognition was successful. Information about the two sovereign divine weapons appeared in Qin Feiyang's mind. Gold Sun God. Silver Moon. The two great divine swords were both born from the Heaven Bell divine treasure. Qin Feiyang asked, how much do you guys know about the Heaven Bell divine treasure? Why, Begus will tell you. Gold's gold divine weapons. Although he had made a blood oath, the blood oath was only limited to never betraying him. It did not say that he had to answer his questions. Feiyang's sovereign divine weapons. Let me tell you, the Sky Bell divine treasure isn't as simple as you think. Find a place fine to hide. Dragon's Silver Moon God sword was also unruly. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. It seemed that when he forced the sovereign divine weapons to make a blood oath in the future, he would have to add another one. They had to be honest and answer all questions. Otherwise, with their unruly characters, it would be hard to control them. Bang! At this moment, in the distance, a rumbling sound could be heard. Battle fluctuation? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked up. The rumbling sound wasn't very loud. Moreover, the battle fluctuation was also very weak. It was impossible to distinguish the aura of the battle. Obviously, the location of the battle was very far away from him. And this direction seemed to be the direction Li Feng went. It seemed that Li Feng had already found the skeleton and was suppressing it. After all, there was a battle between sovereign divine weapons here. The nearby skeletons must have fled far away. With Li Feng's current strength, suppressing the skeletons shouldn't be a problem. Are you sure you want to continue being so arrogant? Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and glanced at the two sovereign divine weapons with ill intentions. We are so arrogant. What can you do to us? The two sovereign divine weapons sneered. Is that so? Don't forget your current situation. Your main body hasn't recovered yet. I also believe that the resentment in the heart of the ancient castle and the sword of Thanatos shouldn't have dissipated yet. Qin Feiyang laughed. The two sovereign divine weapons froze. Golden Sun divine sword hurriedly said as if to please. Don't. It's just a joke. What's there to be serious about? Actually, we're not arrogant at all. We're very low-key and humble. If you don't believe me, you can ask around. Our character is also very good. Silver Moon Divine Sword also smiled flatteringly. The veins on Qin Feiyang's forehead suddenly jumped. Low-key and humble? Had a good character? Could they be more shameless? After all, they were sovereign divine weapons. Didn't they feel that they were going against their conscience? He could see that these two were simply unreliable bastards. It was also his fault for being blind. From the cooperation at the beginning to the pursuit later, he should have already seen the character of these two bastards. Keeping them by his side was simply keeping two troublemakers. But they were sovereign divine weapons. He couldn't bear to let them go. What a dilemma. He dared to bet. When he met up with the white-eyed wolf, these two sovereign divine weapons would definitely collude with the white-eyed wolf immediately, because they were all the same. Then tell me, where's the exit of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? How many sovereign divine weapons are there around here? Is there any inheritance of the ultimate profound meaning of the strongest law? Qin Feiyang asked helplessly. Since they were leaving the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, there must be an exit. The little rabbit and the Feather Emperor didn't tell him the location of the exit, so he could only find it himself. You have so many questions. How do you want us to answer? Golden Sun Divine Sword muttered. Nonsense. Of course you have to answer them one by one. Do you still need me to teach you this? Qin Feiyang roared. He was really going crazy. It was actually so difficult to even speak. No need, no need. Golden Sun Divine Sword smiled embarrassedly. Boom. But at this moment, the battle fluctuations in the distance suddenly became several times stronger. Qin Feiyang once again raised his head to look, and a trace of bewilderment crept up between his brows. This was the aura of the ultimate profound meaning. And there was more than one ultimate profound meaning. Moreover, in addition to the aura of the ultimate profound meaning, there seemed to be another aura. It seemed to be super forbidden technique. Not good. Qin Feiyang's expression changed and he shouted, "Quickly follow me." Immediately, he stepped on space-time steps and rushed towards the battlefield. Are you not going to listen to us answer your questions? Golden Sun Divine Sword and Silver Hair Divine Sword chased after him and asked, I'm not in the mood to mess around with you guys right now. It's best if you know what's good for you. Qin Feiyang's face was gloomy. Asking Li Feng to find a skeleton, he actually encountered a supreme expert with a super forbidden technique. This Sky Bell Divine Treasure was indeed full of danger. However, the skeleton shouldn't have a super forbidden technique, right? Then it must be someone from the Sky Cloud realm. Dragons? Feng people? Or the Qilin clan? In the distance, in the sky above a shattered mountain range, two figures were constantly fighting in the void. One of them was Li Feng. At this moment, one could only see that his entire body was dripping with blood, and he was in an extremely sorry state. The other person was a woman. She looked to be in her 20s. She was wearing a tight white outfit that accentuated her petite and exquisite figure. Her snow-white hair was tied up high, making her look valiant and formidable. Bing Rinning, don't go too far. Li Feng roared. That's right. This woman was Bing Rinning. Compared to before, her current strength was much stronger. Not only had she stepped into the great perfection sovereign realm, she had even grasped a supreme profound meaning. Don't blame me. You can only blame yourself for being acquainted with Qin Feiyang. Bing Rinning sneered. The frost that filled the sky instantly froze, freezing the world. Ice Law's ultimate profound meaning. Li Feng activated the ultimate profound meaning of the slaughter law, and the sky full of blood-colored lightning poured down, crazily colliding with the frost. Still struggling? Bing Rinning shook her head and sneered. But suddenly, she raised her head to look at the void in front of her, and saw a white-clothed youth streaking across the sky like lightning. It was Qin Feiyang. Bing Rinning. Qin Feiyang also saw Bing Rinning, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. You're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Do you know why I haven't killed this person yet? Because I've been waiting for you. Waiting for you to come and see him die under my sword with your own eyes. Ice Phoenix sword kill. As Bing Rinning sneered, a sword shadow swept out from her body. It was the sovereign divine weapon, Ice Phoenix Sword. As soon as the Ice Dragon Sword appeared, it erupted with a terrifying sword chi that turned into a torrent, shattering the void and the earth as it charged toward Li Feng. You can stay here and enjoy the pain of losing your companion. Bing Renning sneered. Clang. As soon as Bing Renning's voice fell, the Ice Phoenix Sword immediately turned around and left with Bing Renning without looking back. The torrent formed by the sword chi did not stop at all, and instantly drowned Li Feng. Li Feng! Qin Feiyang roared. At this time, even the ancient castle and the death god's sword were too late to rescue him. They could only watch as Li Feng was shattered by the sword chi. I'll go. She even dares to provoke this human. This woman is not simple. Ruthless enough. The Gold Sun Divine Sword and the Silver Moon Divine Sword muttered. When Qin Feiyang flew to the sky above the battlefield, the Death God Sword appeared and quickly shattered the sword chi. He could no longer find Li Feng. After all, the Ice Phoenix Sword was a sovereign divine weapon. How could Li Feng's body of flesh and blood withstand the attack of a sovereign divine weapon? Not even his bones were left behind. Bing Renning, I won't let you go. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. With a fierce roar, he prepared to chase after Bing Renning. Qin Dage, but suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. Li Feng. Qin Feiyang was startled. He quickly turned his head and saw a youth in blood red flying towards him. What is this? He actually didn't die? Then who was the one who died under the sword chi? Not only Qin Feiyang, the Death God Sword, the Gold Sun Divine Sword, and the Silver Moon Divine Sword were all dumbfounded on the spot. They had seen Li Feng die here with their own eyes. Li Feng flew over and looked at the battlefield below, his face full of fear. What's going on? Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and asked anxiously. Chapter 3694. Luckily I'm smart. Li Feng grinned and explained. Earlier, I encountered a human-shaped skeleton here, and was about to take it down when Bing Renning suddenly appeared. I know that Bing Renning is the daughter of Bing Feng people, so she must have a sovereign divine weapon on her. So when I saw her appear, I immediately looked for an opportunity to activate the puppet true body. In other words, she only killed one of my true body puppets, Yi Zichen said. Li Feng explained. Puppet true bodies? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Li Feng nodded. As he waved his hand, blood gushed out. Then, the blood quickly condensed into a blood-red clothed youth under Qin Feiyang's shocked gaze. This blood-red clothed youth looked exactly like Li Feng. This is my puppet true body, Yi Futian said. The puppet true body was condensed from my own blood. Not only does it have my consciousness, but it also has all of my means. It's equivalent to another me. Li Feng smiled. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang came to a sudden realization, and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Dage, thank you. Li Feng said. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked suspiciously, what are you thanking me for? Thank you for still being so concerned about me. Li Feng chuckled. He had seen Qin Feiyang's unusually angry expression with his own eyes. It was obvious. His importance in Qin Dage's heart had never changed. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but roll his eyes when he heard this. He then looked at the puppet true body and asked curiously, it seems to be similar to the 3,000 incarnations? More or less, but the numbers are far inferior. I can only summon 3 puppet true bodies at most. It's definitely not comparable to the 3,000 incarnations. Li Feng scratched his head and laughed dryly. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile, with 3 puppet true bodies in your original body, you're already strong enough to dominate the same realm. Dominate the same realm? Li Feng smiled bitterly. Right now he wasn't at the major success sovereign realm, nor was he at the perfection sovereign realm. He was a perfection sovereign realm expert. There were simply too many things contained within the perfect ruler realm. There were ordinary laws and supreme laws. There were also the supreme profundities of ordinary laws and supreme profundities of supreme laws. There were also the ultimate profundities of ordinary laws, as well as the ultimate profundities of supreme laws. The difference between the strong and the weak was not small. Therefore, only existences like the Dragon King and the Feather Emperor would dare to proclaim themselves as the strongest in this realm. However, he was very happy to be praised by Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang suddenly asked, "Will the destruction of the true body of this puppet affect you in any way?" "It doesn't matter. After all, it's condensed from blood. It's just losing some blood." Li Feng shook his head. "Not bad." Qin Feiyang smiled and turned to look in the direction Bing Rinning had left. "Pain. Sorry to disappoint you. This woman must be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future." Li Feng also raised his head and looked in that direction. His eyes flickered with wisps of bloody light as he said, "Qin Dage, this Bing Rinning's strength is much stronger than when she fought with Princess Huofeng on White Crane Island. You can't be careless." "You know about what happened on White Crane Island?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. The Sky Palace Lord told me." Li Feng nodded. "Then, when you fought with Bing Rinning before, what do you think of her current strength?" Qin Feiyang asked. "First of all, her cultivation has reached the perfect ruler realm. Secondly, she has comprehended the supreme profundities of the law of ice. The most important thing is that she carries a sovereign divine weapon with her." Li Feng seemed a little unconvinced, because if Bing Rinning didn't have a sovereign divine weapon, he wouldn't be afraid at all. "That's all?" Qin Feiyang said. "Yes." Li Feng was stunned and nodded with a bitter smile. "That's all?" These words were too hurtful. However, this man did have the qualifications to say such words. "Compared to these, I want to know more. Why is she here? And when did you appear here?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. "You mean, she might have seen us subduing White Dragon Sword and the other two sovereign divine weapons?" Li Feng was surprised. All these years you have been in the northern continent. Later, you hid in the Sky Palace. Even when we found you, you hid in the Death Glacier. Therefore no one knows about our relationship." "But how did she know? Why did she wait for me here?" "It's not hard to imagine that she knew I was nearby," Qin Feiyang said. "Maybe she sensed the fluctuations of the battle between the ancient castle and the Grim Reaper's sword. So she knew you were here?" Li Feng said. "No. I reckon that after persuading White Dragon's Sword and the others, Bing Rinning discovered us and hid in the dark to watch us." Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Li Feng asked suspiciously, "Why do you say that it was after we persuaded White Dragon's Sword and the others?" "It's simple. If Bing Rinning had appeared before we persuaded White Dragon's Sword and the others, she would not have let go of this good opportunity and joined forces with them to kill me." Qin Feiyang smiled. "That's true." Li Feng nodded. Based on Bing Rinning's hatred for Qin Feiyang, seeing Qin Feiyang being chased by several sovereign divine weapons, she would not hesitate to attack. This woman must be killed. Otherwise, White Dragon Sword and the others will not be able to continue hiding among the dragons. Moreover, she deserves to die. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with killing intent. He looked at the Grim Reaper's sword and asked, "Can we still chase after her?" The Grim Reaper's sword said, "Ice Phoenix Sword's aura will remain. We can chase after her." "Okay, chase after her," Qin Feiyang said. Since she came to provoke him, she could not blame him for being ruthless. Clang! The sword of the Grim Reaper immediately took Qin Feiyang and the two battle swords and streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning in the direction Bing Rinning had left. Li Feng looked at the two battle swords for a moment, then suddenly moved closer to Qin Feiyang's ear and whispered, "Qin Dage, with them, won't it be easy to track Bing Rinning?" Qin Feiyang was slightly surprised. He turned to look at the two battle swords and quickly understood what Li Feng meant. The nest of the two sovereign divine weapons, which was the valley, was only a day's journey from here. Therefore, they must be very familiar with everything in this area. This included the human-shaped skeletons and sovereign divine weapons in this area. As long as they helped, there would be a way to stop Bing Rinning. "Why are you looking at us?" Seeing Qin Feiyang's gaze, the two battle swords could not help but panic. Qin Feiyang asked, "You should have a way to stop Bing Rinning, right? So you have something to ask of us?" "Of course. We are very familiar with this area. Stopping her will be child's play." The two divine swords smiled proudly. "Okay, help me stop her," Qin Feiyang said. Why should I? Also, is this the attitude you use to ask for help? The two divine swords snorted. Qin Feiyang's face was dark. He looked at the sword of the Grim Reaper and said, "Help me find a human-shaped skeleton along the way. I will let them see the power of the blood oath." Okay. The sword of the Grim Reaper responded. Its divine sense rolled out and covered all directions. Whoosh. The next moment, the sword of the Grim Reaper turned in the air and descended on a mountain like lightning. There was an ancient town below. There was a human-shaped skeleton hidden in the ancient town. At this moment, it sensed the aura of the sword of the Grim Reaper and was trembling. As a sovereign divine weapon, there was no doubt about the strength of the sword of the Grim Reaper. It directly crushed the ancient town and controlled the human-shaped skeleton. Then, under Qin Feiyang's coercion, the human-shaped skeleton quickly made a blood oath. Moreover, the oath this time was very direct and violent. As long as the human-shaped skeleton had a trace of resentment towards Qin Feiyang, it would be killed by the heavenly tribulation. After the blood oath was completed, Qin Feiyang let the sword of the Grim Reaper release the human-shaped skeleton. After the human-shaped skeleton obtained its freedom, without knowing that the blood oath would come true, it immediately had a trace of killing intent towards Qin Feiyang. Just as this killing intent appeared, the blood clouds in the sky churned, and a heavenly tribulation descended from the sky. The human-shaped skeleton was instantly shattered in the air, and its body and soul were destroyed. During the entire process, the sword of the Grim Reaper did not stop at all. It continued to chase after the remaining aura of the Ice Phoenix sword. At the side, Qin Feiyang looked at the heavenly tribulation that had killed the human-shaped skeleton in the air behind him and sneered. "Do you believe me now?" At this moment, the two divine swords were already trembling. "It would actually come true?" Li Feng said in a deep voice. "So from now on you'd better be honest." "So what if it comes true? We are Dominator divine weapons. How can an undead compare to us? I really don't believe that there is a heavenly tribulation in this world that can kill our Dominator divine weapons." The Gold Sun divine sword was still a little unwilling. "Don't test my patience. I have destroyed more than one Dominator divine weapon in my hands." Qin Feiyang stared at the two divine swords, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. Hearing this, the two divine swords' hearts trembled again. He had actually destroyed a Dominator divine weapon before? There was no denying it. This human brat did have the ability to do so. After all, he carried two Dominator divine weapons with him. But how could he bear to do so? When other humans saw a Dominator divine weapon, they couldn't wait to curry favor with it. It seemed that he was a ruthless person. "Sigh, you guys should be more tactful. Don't look at how amiable he has always been, and how he seems to be playing around with you. If you really anger him, the consequences are not something you can imagine." The sword of the Grim Reaper secretly transmitted its voice. Hearing this, the two divine swords pondered for a moment and said, "All right, we'll help you." The sword of the Grim Reaper couldn't help, but secretly heave a sigh of relief. It was really worried that these two guys were too arrogant and in the end, completely angered Qin Feiyang and directly destroyed them. Frankly speaking, destroying two Dominator divine weapons in one go, the sword of the Grim Reaper couldn't help but feel a heartache. At the same time, the fierce light in Qin Feiyang's eyes finally dissipated, and was replaced by a trace of a smile. "In this area, besides the old devil and us, there are two other Dominator divine weapons. We can inform them to help intercept them. And one Dominator divine weapon is right in front of us. If Bing Rinning doesn't know in advance, she will definitely pass by there," the Gold Sun divine sword said. Chapter 3695. There are two more sovereign weapons. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other, and a bright light flickered in their eyes. "What's wrong? You want to take them away again?" The Golden Sun godly sword laughed. "Can't I?" Li Feng asked. "Sure. I can even help you." The Golden Sun godly sword laughed. "You're that kind?" Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were surprised. This was not the Golden Sun godly sword style. "We're brothers. Of course we should share happiness and difficulties." The Golden Sun godly sword laughed. Li Feng looked at the Golden Sun godly sword and shook his head. "You've changed too quickly. You were unhappy with us before, and now you're calling us brothers? Hearing this, the Golden Sun Godly Sword was stunned and said, Qin Feiyang, there's something wrong with your little brother's brain. What's wrong with my brain? Li Feng glared at the Golden Sun Godly Sword. There's indeed something wrong with his brain. The Silver Moon Godly Sword said disdainfully. My brain is bad. Li Feng was stunned. He looked at the two swords suspiciously and asked, What do you mean? Sorry. We don't like to talk to retards. The two divine swords chuckled. Li Feng was furious and shouted, You're the retards. Can't you talk nicely? Who are you looking down on? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. He looked at Li Feng and said, They're so-called brothers, they're so-called sharing blessings and suffering together. Doesn't refer to us. Huh. Li Feng looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. If they were not referring to them, who were they referring to? They're referring to the two sovereign weapons. These two bastards are uncomfortable in our hands, so they want to drag the other two sovereign weapons down with them. Only then will they feel better. Qin Feiyang explained. I see. Li Feng suddenly understood. He looked at the two swords in disdain and said, You two are really bad. Only a blind sovereign weapon would be friends with you. Speak properly. Although we are afraid of Qin Feiyang, it doesn't mean that we are afraid of you. Do you believe that we will kill you? The two divine swords instantly turned hostile and said fiercely, If you dare to do it, why are you afraid of others talking about it? Li Feng's face was filled with disdain. Qin Dage was right. They were two things and two wicked things at that. Other people would plead for their friends and brothers and help them out of trouble. However, these two things were great. They were being controlled and felt unbalanced. They even wanted their brothers around them to be controlled by others. He even offered to help. He couldn't help but sympathize with the two sovereigns' divine weapons. Qin Feiyang looked at the two divine swords and asked, Back to the main topic. How do we contact the two sovereign divine weapons? You can't contact him, but we can. Our dominator weapons don't need a transmission stone to communicate with each other. Because we communicate through telepathy. Two divine sword Daos. Is that so? Qin Feiyang looked at the sword of Thanatos. Yes. Sovereign divine weapons can establish a telepathic contract with each other. It has the same meaning as the transmission stone. After establishing a telepathic contract, as long as we are in the same space, no matter how far away we are, we can contact each other, unless there is a restriction. The sword of Thanatos explained. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, So the Sky Bell Divine Treasure doesn't have such a restriction? Then, can we also communicate through the Divine Sound Transmission Stone? Stop dreaming. You small fries can't compare to our sovereign divine weapons. The sovereign divine weapon is already above the rules. Unless there are rules that specifically target us, ordinary rules are useless against us, said Yi Futian. Jinyang Divine Sword looked down on them. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He was looked down on again. Li Feng took out the transmission stone and tried to send a message to the blood ancestor, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no response. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He looked at the two divine swords and said, Then quickly contact them and ask for help. All right. Jinyang Divine Sword replied. At the same time, in front, in the sky above a mountain range, two streaks of light streaked across the sky like lightning. It was the Ice Phoenix sword and Bing running. This is the result of offending me. Just you wait, the more painful things are yet to come. Bing running whispered with a sneer on her face. Ever since she was defeated by Princess Huofeng in front of everyone on White Crane Island, a strong resentment had risen in her heart. Especially after that, his physical body was crushed. If not for the protection of the Ice Phoenix sword, the Profound Ice Divine Hammer, and the Profound Ice Divine Bow, she would have probably died on White Crane Island. When she returned to the Phoenix Nest, she spent every moment thinking about revenge and wiping away her previous humiliation. Now, she finally got the chance to kill the people around Qin Feiyang. She felt a lot better in her heart. Where are we going next? Ice Phoenix Sword asked. Of course we're going to find the Golden Winged Wolf King and Madman Mo. as well as those ants in the heavenly cloud sea and the land of buried gods. This time, I'm going to kill them all. Bing Rinning's face was quite ferocious. It's not that easy to be afraid. After all, these people either have a sovereign divine weapon, or have mastered the ultimate profound. Ice Phoenix Sword said. So what if it's the ultimate profound? In this world, only the ultimate profound of the strongest law can truly compete with sovereign divine weapons like you. So even if you meet them, you'll still kill them. Bing Rinning sneered. Ice Phoenix Sword pondered for a while and sighed. This is a rare opportunity to enter the Sky Bell divine treasure. I personally feel that you shouldn't just do it for the hatred in your heart. It's best to find the epitome of the law or the inheritance of the ultimate profound. I know I don't need you to remind me. In short, you have to kill people and find the epitome of the law. Bing Rinning snorted coldly. There was no respect for Ice Phoenix Sword in her tone, as if she was reprimanding a follower. Up to you. Ice Phoenix Sword didn't say anything more. She had tried to persuade her. Whether she listened or not was her own business. Time flew. Half a day passed. A canyon came into sight. The canyon was tens of thousands of miles long, with layers upon layers of mountains, like a big maze. In the canyon, other than the aura of the skeletons, no other powerful aura could be sensed. So, Ice Phoenix Sword took Bing Rinning and flew straight into the canyon. It was naturally impossible for the skeletons to come and offend the sovereign divine weapon, so they smoothly reached the center of the canyon. Why do I have an ominous premonition? Suddenly, Ice Phoenix Sword muttered. Bing Rinning was slightly taken aback as she scanned the canyon below and frowned. There's no danger at all, you must be hallucinating. Maybe, however, before her voice fell, accompanied by a loud clang, a terrifying aura erupted like a volcano. The originally calm canyon was razed to the ground. Dust and smoke billowed. And at the next moment, a palm-sized ancient pagoda rushed out from the canyon below, carrying a monstrous might as it blasted toward Ice Phoenix Sword. Sovereign divine weapon. Bing Rinning's face suddenly changed. Clang. Ice Phoenix Sword also quivered as sword chi surged out and slashed toward the ancient pagoda. The two divine weapons collided with a loud bang. In this place, the sky suddenly fell and the earth cracked, as if it was the end of the world. Countless skeletons of beasts were annihilated. Why did you sneak attack us? Ice Phoenix Sword shouted angrily. I was entrusted by someone to intercept you. The ancient pagoda responded coldly, and once again charged toward Ice Phoenix Sword. Entrusted by someone? Ice Phoenix Sword and Bing Rinning were surprised. Who had such great face to be able to persuade the sovereign divine weapon to help intercept them? We have to get rid of it quickly, Bing Rinning said in a deep voice. Ice Phoenix Sword's firepower was fully unleashed, and the terrifying sword chi turned into a vast ocean, overwhelming the ancient pagoda. However, the ancient pagoda was also a sovereign divine weapon. Would it be so easy to break through its blockade? The two divine weapons collided crazily, destroying heaven and earth. Although their strength was equal, the ancient pagoda didn't seem to want to go all out and let Ice Phoenix Sword find an opportunity to send it flying. Swish. Immediately after, the Ice Phoenix Sword didn't continue to fight and flew away with Bing Rinning without looking back. Boom. However, at this moment, an astonishing divine might erupted in front of them. A huge golden bell emerged from the ground, and the loud sound of the bell shook the heavens and earth. What? There's another sovereign divine weapon? Bing Rinning's face couldn't help but turn pale. Two sovereign divine weapons intercepting? Who was it? She had thought of Qin Feiyang, but she immediately rejected it. Because Qin Feiyang was the same as her, an invader, from the sky cloud boundary. The sovereign divine weapons here wouldn't help an outsider. We don't want to fight, so it's fine as long as you stay here. The golden bell said, its voice as deafening as thunder. Who is it? Bing Rinning roared. You'll know later. The ancient pagoda said coldly, and stood behind Bing Rinning and Ice Phoenix Sword, facing the two sovereign divine weapons one after the other, not to mention Bing Rinning. Even Ice Phoenix Sword couldn't help but start to panic. If the profound Ice Divine Hammer and profound Ice Divine Bow were also with me, how could I allow you to be so presumptuous? Bing Running's face was as calm as water as she shouted. Ice Phoenix Sword, no matter what price we have to pay, we must break through. To be able to persuade two sovereign divine weapons to intercept them. This meant that this person must be very terrifying. If they were really stopped here, they would definitely be doomed. Ice Phoenix Sword attacked without holding back, its sword chi drowning the sky like a flood. However, the two sovereign divine weapons were still able to easily dissolve its attack, so it couldn't break through. How can you be so useless? Bing Running roared angrily. Hearing this, Ice Phoenix Sword couldn't help but feel angry. How dare you say I'm useless? Do you understand the current situation? You're not facing two heaven-defying divine weapons, but two sovereign divine weapons. Moreover, I have to divert some of my attention to protect you. It wasn't easy for it to reach this step. What more do you want? Time passed breath by breath. Facing the predicament of not being able to break through, Ice Phoenix Sword and Bing Running were extremely anxious. Boom. Suddenly, behind them, another terrifying divine aura rolled over. This is Bing Running's eyelids twitched. The Sword of the Grim Reaper. It wasn't the first time she had fought with the Sword of the Grim Reaper, so she could instantly distinguish the aura of the Sword of the Grim Reaper. Qin Feiyang and the others had actually caught up. Chapter 3696. Quick, quick, Bing Running urged. Was there a need for her to urge them? As soon as the aura of the Sword of Thanatos appeared, the Ice Phoenix Sword was already desperately trying to break through. In the current Sky Cloud realm, apart from the Dragon King and the other giants, Qin Feiyang was naturally the most terrifying. Once he seized the opportunity, even the sovereign divine weapon would not be able to escape. But the ancient pagoda and the golden bell refused to give way. The Ice Phoenix Sword said in a deep voice, "Please let us go. If there is a chance today, we will definitely repay you." Yes, yes, yes. We are from the phone people. Give us face and let us leave. Bing Running also pleaded repeatedly. There was no other way. Unable to force their way out, they could only lower their posture. Phone people? Do the phone people have a lot of face? However, the words of the two sovereign divine weapons were full of disdain. You. Bing Running was instantly enraged. She said gloomily, "What did the one who sent you to intercept our people give you? I can give you double." Sorry. No need. The two sovereign divine weapons were incomparably cold. Bastard. You are courting your own destruction. When the experts of the phone people gather, I will immediately destroy you, Bing Running roared. Not to mention the experts of the phone people, even if your phone people's phone ho came in person, I may not put her in my eyes. The golden bell sneered. Bing Running's heart suddenly sank to the bottom. It seemed that no matter whether it was coercion or temptation, it was useless. We are really fated. We meet again so soon. At this time, the Sword of Thanatos also brought Qin Feiyang and the two sovereign divine swords to the sky above the canyon. Looking at the Ice Phoenix Sword and Bing Running, a smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Not dead? Bing Running was about to speak, but when she saw Li Feng next to her, her face was full of disbelief. Did I disappoint you? Li Feng snickered. Impossible. Bing Running shook her head. How could he be unharmed in the face of the sovereign divine weapon? Could it be that this person also had a sovereign divine weapon? But that's not right. If this person really did have a sovereign divine weapon, then he would have used all his strength to restrain her and the Ice Phoenix Sword, waiting for Qin Feiyang to come to their aid. Nothing is impossible in this world. Li Feng smiled coldly. He turned to Qin Feiyang and pleaded, "Qin Dage, give me a chance. Let me kill her." Qin Feiyang frowned. "Don't worry. I'll end this quickly," Li Feng said. He knew Qin Feiyang's concerns. Things might change if he delayed. All right. Looking at the confident Li Feng, Qin Feiyang finally nodded and agreed. He turned to the two divine swords and said with a smile, "Tell your friend to stop. Old antique, old death knell, thanks." The Golden Sun divine sword soared into the air and said with a smile, "Just this once." The ancient pagoda and the golden bell responded coldly and immediately retreated to the side. "It's really you guys who ordered them to intercept us here," Bing Running said angrily. "That's right. The Golden Sun Divine Sword smiled proudly and said with contempt, "Why don't you go and find out who's the boss in this area? How dare you be so presumptuous here? Aren't you courting death? You're the boss here?" When the Golden Bell and the Ancient Pagoda heard this, they seemed a little dissatisfied. Don't be angry. We're all the bosses." The Golden Sun Divine Sword laughed. Humph. The two Dominator Divine Weapons snorted and fell silent. Looking at Bing Rinning again, her face was gloomy to the extreme. Why was this Qin Feiyang able to get help from others no matter where he went? In terms of identity, in terms of status, where was she inferior? Inside. Extreme jealousy and anger. One had to know. And this was with the help of the Dominator Divine Weapon. Even she didn't have this honor. What qualifications did a mere human have? Qin Feiyang looked at Bing Rinning and said indifferently, "Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. You fight with Li Feng. If you win, I'll let you and the Ice Phoenix sword leave." Really? Bing Rinning was slightly stunned and asked anxiously. "I'm a man of my word." Qin Feiyang nodded. "All right." Bing Rinning nodded without hesitation. She looked at Li Feng and sneered. "Let me see what kind of ability you have to challenge me, Princess Bing Feng. We admit that you're the princess. We don't admit that you're just a pheasant." Li Feng's face was full of disdain. "You're courting death." Bing Rinning was furious. He actually dared to humiliate her? He really didn't know what death was. Boom. The Law of Ice rolled out, and the Supreme Profound was instantly activated. Suddenly, a shocking frost appeared between heaven and earth. The void and earth here began to freeze. The cold current was bone-chilling. "Pheasant?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at Bing Rinning and smiled. "These two words are quite suitable for you." Bing Rinning suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang, her eyes flashing with shocking killing intent. Boom. Li Feng took a step forward at this time. The law of slaughter surged out. The frost and the bone-chilling wind turned the heaven and earth into a sea of blood. Blood-red lightning collided with the frost like a python. Qin Feiyang, the sword of the Grim Reaper, and the two divine swords all took a few steps back. To tell the truth, Qin Feiyang also wanted to see how strong Li Feng was. The two Supreme Profound were constantly fighting and clashing back and forth. A terrifying aura flooded all directions. "How dare an ant like you challenge this princess? You're overestimating yourself." Bing Rinning stood in the frost, her body surging with cold current. She was like an ice empress, looking down at Li Feng with contempt as if she was looking at a pitiful reptile. Boom. The other four laws and the Devour Law were activated. Although these 5 laws hadn't reached the level of the Supreme Profound, the power of the 5th Profound couldn't be underestimated. The Devour Law. Is this the strength of the princess of the Ice Phoenix clan? You've disappointed me. With your strength, not to mention Qin Dage, even I can crush you. Li Feng's face was full of sarcasm. As soon as he finished speaking, the Space-Time Law, the Devour Law, the Death Law, the 5th Profound of the 3 Supreme Laws were all activated. What? Bing Rinning's eyes suddenly glazed over. When she fought with Li Feng previously, Li Feng didn't activate these 3 Supreme Laws, so she thought that Li Feng's strongest law was the Slaughter Law. She didn't expect him to master 3 Supreme Laws. Why was he another monster? Boom. The 3 Supreme Laws attacked. Even if Bing Rinning activated all the laws, the Supreme Law was still the Devour Law. Only the Devour Law could compete with the 3 Supreme Laws. The other 4 Supreme Laws didn't have the ability to fight against the Supreme Laws. Accompanied by a deafening sound, the 5th Profound of the other 4 Supreme Laws collapsed and disintegrated on the spot. Then, Li Feng's 3 Supreme Laws collided with Bing Rinning's Devour Law. In the face of the 5th Profound of the 3 Supreme Laws, just the Devouring Law alone was able to shatter without any suspense. Bing Rinning's delicate body trembled, her face turned pale, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. You're just SOSO without a sovereign divine weapon. Li Feng smiled contemptuously. Bing Rinning wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, then lowered her head to look at the phoenix blood on her hand. Her originally beautiful face looked extremely ferocious. All of a sudden, she raised her head and stared at Li Feng, a blood-red light flashing in her eyes. Congratulations, you've completely angered me. Pay the price. Bing Renning smiled ferociously. Boom. Waves of ice flames and flames broke out of her body at the same time. The next moment, a boundary of ice and fire appeared. Ice and fire were originally incompatible, but at this moment, they didn't repel each other at all. This is Divine Phoenix Domain? Qin Feiyang frowned. The Divine Phoenix Domain was the super forbidden technique of the Feng people. Chirp. Accompanied by two sharp phoenix cries, an ice phoenix and a fire phoenix rushed out of the boundary, exuding a destructive aura. It's indeed a super forbidden technique. Qin Feiyang murmured. Divine Dragon Domain, Divine Phoenix Domain, Qilin Domain. Each clan had their own inherited forbidden techniques. But weren't these super forbidden techniques only qualified to be inherited by the clan leaders of each generation? Bing Renning didn't seem to be qualified. Go to hell. Bing Renning laughed and waved her arms, and the two divine phoenixes immediately rushed toward Li Feng with a destructive aura. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but look at Li Feng. Everyone knew the power of a super forbidden technique, and Li Feng's puppet true body shouldn't be able to block it. But suddenly, his pupil shrank slightly, because he felt that there seemed to be a terrifying aura quietly awakening in Li Feng's body. Boom. Just as the two divine phoenixes were about to attack, a sea of blood suddenly appeared around Li Feng. Countless corpses floated in the sea of blood, as if a purgatory had appeared. It made one's hair stand on end. I'm really surprised. A single super forbidden technique actually gave you so much confidence. Li Feng cackled like a devil, causing one's scalp to go numb. Boom. The next moment, a huge skull appeared in the sea of blood, like a towering mountain. It was blood-red and filled with a murderous aura. Around the skull, there seemed to be countless ferocious ghosts screaming and howling. Super forbidden technique. Corpse Mountain Blood Sea. Following Li Feng's sinister laugh, the blood-red skull immediately charged out of the blood sea and blasted towards the two ice phoenixes and fire phoenixes that were swooping down. Accompanied by a loud bang, the world lost its color, and the place instantly turned into nothingness. Super forbidden technique. Bing Renning looked at Li Feng in a daze. At this moment, she seemed to see a ghost standing in the middle of the sea of blood. She couldn't help but feel an uncontrollable fear in her heart. Princess Bing Feng, that's it. Li Feng chuckled. Hearing this, Bing Renning felt a great shame in her heart. She roared. I'm going to kill you, crush you, and never let you be reincarnated. A strange aura surged out of her body like an invisible tide, enveloping Li Feng. Within this aura, there was a will of despair. This is Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled slightly. He saw that Bing Renning's eyes had turned gray, like a pair of emotionless eyes. When he saw this pair of eyes, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a trace of despair. That's right. This was one of the 10 strongest fighting souls, the eyes of despair. It was exactly the same as the demon ancestors' eyes of despair. Chapter 3697. Unexpectedly. He really did not expect this. The other half of the Eye of Despair was actually in Bing Renning. Qin Feiyang was naturally familiar with the Eye of Despair. When he fought with the demon ancestor, he had fallen into the Eye of Despair. That kind of endless despair that came from the depths of the soul could not be erased. It could be said that no one could withstand it. At that time, if not for the strong obsession in his heart, even he would not be able to walk out of the despair. But it was different now. After stepping into the sovereign realm, one's essence, energy, and spirit had been refined and one's mind was tough. He was also immune to such negative emotions. In short, these fighting souls were the same as the Eye of Heaven. Once one stepped into the sovereign realm, they were not very useful. But if two Eyes of Despair merged, it would be a different story. But now Bing Renning only had half of the Eye of Despair. Even if it brought some negative emotions to Li Feng, the impact would not be great. In fact, Bing Renning knew this in her heart. The current Eye of Despair could not really cause Li Feng to fall into it. What she needed to do was to make Li Feng distracted for a moment. Because in a battle of this level, a slight distraction would give the opponent the opportunity to kill. She needed this opportunity. Therefore, the instant she activated her Eyes of Despair, she attacked without hesitation. All sorts of laws, profundities, and super forbidden techniques were directed at Li Feng. But she had obviously underestimated Li Feng. One had to know. In terms of killing, Li Feng far surpassed Qin Feiyang. The number of living beings that had died in his hands was countless. It was also because of these killings that his character became ruthless and cold. His heart was as hard as stone. Moreover, in these killings, regardless of whether it was his battle experience or his battle awareness, they were far superior to others. Such feelings of despair could not really affect Li Feng. Boom. Almost at the same time as Bing Runing attacked, Li Feng also attacked. How could this be? Bing Runing was stunned again. He was not affected at all. The aura of despair. If I'm not wrong, it should be one of the legendary 10 strongest fighting souls, the Eye of Despair. However, aren't you looking down on me too much? How can such negative emotions affect my mind? Li Feng sneered. Who in the world did not know about the 10 strongest fighting souls? Therefore, Li Feng quickly thought of the Eye of Despair. Boom. As soon as Li Feng finished speaking, the forbidden technique and the various profundities collided. This time, Li Feng still had the upper hand. Moreover, Li Feng realized that the battle had dragged on for too long. He immediately activated his puppet true body. As soon as the 3 puppets' true bodies appeared, they activated all sorts of profound meanings and forbidden techniques. Their terrifying aura made Bing Runing feel despair. What's going on? This person also had 3,000 incarnations. Not 3,000 clones, but it's enough to kill you. Li Feng smiled savagely. 3 puppet true bodies, plus his true body, were equivalent to 4 Li Fengs. Not to mention the profound laws. Even the 4 great forbidden techniques were not something Bing Runing could match. Although the Divine Phoenix domain also possessed an extremely strong defense, it was still easily destroyed by the 4 super forbidden techniques. As expected, with a loud crack, the Divine Phoenix domain shattered with a loud bang. The 4 super forbidden arts and the profundities of laws surged towards Bing Runing like a flood. Ice Phoenix Sword Run. Bing Runing roared in despair, and a destructive aura rushed out of her body. She said resentfully, Qin Feiyang, sooner or later, you will fall into my hands. At that time, I will let you taste a fate worse than death. And you, Li Feng. Boom. As soon as her voice fell, Bing Runing's body exploded in the void, and a destructive wave swept out in all directions. Self-destruction. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Clang. At this time, the Ice Phoenix sword took the opportunity to break through the air like lightning. Where do you think you're going? The Grim Reaper's sword suddenly blocked in front of the Ice Phoenix sword. When it heard that Bing Runing wanted the Ice Phoenix sword to escape, it had already moved. The Ice Phoenix sword's heart sank, and it turned to escape in the other direction. Clang. The ancient castle also appeared at this time, blocking the path of the Ice Phoenix sword. At the same time, the Gold Sun Divine Sword and the Silver Moon Divine Sword appeared one after another, erasing the waves of Bing Runing's self-destruction. Although their bodies were heavily injured and had not recovered, with their strength, erasing the waves of self-destruction was not a problem. You guys go and help as well. Qin Feiyang pointed to the Ice Phoenix sword and said to the 2 divine generals, Are you kidding me? Both of us brothers have been beaten up by you. How can we help? The Gold Sun Divine Sword suddenly howled. Don't you know how to help the ancient castle and the Death God sword? Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. Humph. You're already seriously injured, and you still want us to help. You're simply inhumane. The 2 divine swords snorted and flew over reluctantly, blocking the other 2 directions. What's going on? You want us to help intercept them because of that human youth. Not far away. Seeing this scene, the ancient pagoda and the golden bell couldn't help but feel a trace of suspicion in their hearts. They originally thought that the 2 divine swords asked them to help intercept them because Bing Runing and the Ice Phoenix sword had offended the 2 divine swords. So the 2 divine swords wanted to take revenge on them. But they didn't expect it to be for a human. And looking at the attitude of the 2 divine swords, they seemed to be afraid of this human youth. Phew. Seeing that the Ice Phoenix sword was stopped, Qin Feiyang let out a long sigh. Qin Dage, how am I? Li Feng flew to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at Qin Feiyang eagerly. like a child longing for an adult's praise. Amazing. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at Li Feng's face, immediately revealing a smile, and said, "But don't be complacent. With your strength, you can at most fight with someone like Bing Runing." "I know." Li Feng nodded. "Anyway, as long as he can get the approval of this big brother. It's a pity for Bing Runing. I didn't expect her soul to be left outside. I wanted to capture her alive, bring her back, and hand her over to the demon ancestor." Qin Feiyang shook his head regretfully. "Demon ancestor?" Li Feng was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, "Why do you want to hand her over to the demon ancestor?" "Because the demon ancestor has also opened the Eye of Despair. Don't think about it. Anyway, she's still alive. When I return to the Sky Cloud realm, I'll look for her again." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Qin Feiyang didn't transmit these words, but they were all heard by the Ice Phoenix Sword, and it was suddenly shocked. It can't be. The other person who opened the Eye of Despair was actually someone around Qin Feiyang? It could already predict how dangerous Bing Runing's situation would be in the future. Because whether it was Qin Feiyang or the so-called demon ancestor, they would definitely try their best to snatch the Eye of Despair. Walking to the side of the castle, Qin Feiyang looked at the Ice Phoenix Sword and said with a smile, "Let's talk." "You want this senior to submit?" the Ice Phoenix Sword asked. "Smart." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. "Impossible." The Ice Phoenix Sword flatly refused. "So straightforward." Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, and said with a wry smile, "But have you ever thought that a person like Bing Runing is really worth your life?" The Ice Phoenix Sword was silent. The Golden Bell coldly snorted and said disdainfully, "This senior will say something fair. That human woman is indeed not qualified to make our sovereign divine weapon work for her." "What do you mean?" The Gold Sun Divine Sword was curious. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng also looked at the Golden Bell suspiciously. "You don't know, but her attitude towards the sovereign divine weapon at that time, this senior wanted to beat her up. Obviously, the sovereign divine weapon has been protecting her, but she actually said, 'Why are you so useless?' If this senior dared to say such words, I would have already killed her." The Golden Bell said contemptuously. "Indeed. Others have protected you like this, not to mention how to repay, but at least in your heart, you should know how to be grateful. Humans are indeed selfish things." The ancient pagoda also said. "So it's like this." Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, and the four sovereign divine weapons suddenly understood. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang dryly coughed, looked at the two sovereign divine weapons and said with a smile, "Seniors, this junior admires your honesty, but you can't say such things. She's not a human, she's obviously an ice phoenix." The two sovereign divine weapons were stunned. There's no difference. That's it, get out of here." The two Dominator divine weapons snorted and left without looking back. "There's still a difference between the human race and the foam people," Qin Feiyang said helplessly. "It's all Bing Runing's fault. She's even tarnished the reputation of the human race." Li Feng looked at the Gold Sun Godly Sword and Silver Moon Godly Sword, and asked sneakily, "You two bastards, didn't you want to drag them down? Why didn't you do anything?" "Who's the bastard? Say that again." The two sovereign divine swords suddenly emitted a dangerous aura. "Ha!" Li Feng laughed dryly. "Young people should know how to respect the old and love the young, do you understand?" The Gold Sun Godly Sword reprimanded, pondered for a moment, and laughed. "This matter is not urgent. When the time comes, we will go and harm them." As expected, it's not a good bird. Li Feng secretly sighed. If the ancient pagoda and the Golden Bell knew what this guy was thinking, they would definitely go crazy with anger. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Gold Sun Godly Sword, and his eyes flashed. If he could really get the ancient pagoda and the Golden Bell, then it would really be a great thing. But now, it's better to persuade the Ice Phoenix Sword first. Qin Feiyang looked at the Ice Phoenix Sword and sighed. "I really didn't expect that Bing Runing would have such an attitude towards an existence like you. It seems that she is really used to being arrogant and despotic." The Ice Phoenix Sword said emotionlessly, "You don't have to deliberately provoke this sovereign. I'm not provoking you. I just feel that it's not worth it for you. Thinking back to the Sky Cloud realm, how many times have we fought, How many times have you saved her? Is this how she repaid you? You are a dignified sovereign divine weapon. No one in this world can take away your freedom, and no one has the right to trample on your dignity. You could have chosen another path. I guess you have seen it with your own eyes. The white dragon sword, the golden dragon spear, and the black dragon mirror have all chosen to accompany me. I don't dare to promise anything else, but at least I dare to promise that I have always respected you sovereign divine weapons. Qin Feiyang said with sincerity. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.